And welcome back to the Big Deal podcast. I'm your friend Cody, and I'm here today to talk about a thing we don't talk about enough. Like, where's the actual science around GLP-1s like Ozempic and eating carnivore and what is right for you based on data, not influencer view count? Then this podcast is going to be for you. I've got Dr. Tina here, who is a fascinating human in many regards. First of all, because she is actually a practicing doctor. She's also a naturopathic doctor, trained both ways, holistically and traditional medicine. And so she understands the full gamut. She's also 51 years old. And so she talks a lot about what it means to be a woman and to be a woman through the ages. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it with Dr. Tina. You know where I wanted to start is basically one. I was laughing with Gabrielle Lyon because I'm like, how come doctors are hotter now than they've ever been? You, her, Andrew
Thank you.
Huberman, amazing. And I think that's actually kind of how it should be, right? Like if people are healthy, it doesn't mean hot, like you have to look like Kim Kardashian, but like healthy and fit and talking to us about being healthy and fit, you should probably look the fucking part. Is that a crazy thing to say that like doctors should also practice what they preach?
I feel strongly about that. I feel like you have to walk the talk.
I think your story is really interesting too because you weren't always so perfect. And so, maybe you could talk a little bit about the fact that, like, hey, wherever you guys are, we see you. I see you because I was you. And now you're 51. You look great.
Thank you.
And you're applying these practices in a way that's like you can be a normal human too. So maybe talk to us about the pack a day situation.
Yeah, so we were talking off camera. I chain smoked for 10 years, pack a day from 14 to 24. Don't know why. Probably because I was, growing up in Oregon where it rains all the time and it's really depressing and dark. We drank a lot back then. That was like a big drinking culture. I don't think that today's young people are drinking nearly as much, but when I grew up, everybody was drinking, particularly in places where there was nothing else to do. And I wasn't so healthy and fit. I think as a child, I spent a lot of time doing gymnastics and sports. And so there was some muscle memory there.
Mm.
And then I spent a long swath of time just eating, I call myself I was a macaroni and cheeseitarian. I literally was just, I'm not going to eat meat. And then I ate just garbage, So I pretty much consumed garbage for a extensive period of time. And then I had my daughter who's going to be 25, gosh, in a few weeks. And I remember laying on the couch with a migraine, just feeling awful and looking at her, and she was a toddler and she was like, "Mom, come play, mommy, come play." And I remember thinking, I can't be a piece of shit mom. Like I can't lay here and be that mom, when I know better. And by then I had spent time working with my mentor who was a phenomenal naturopathic physician. I knew better and I wasn't doing it. I was still eating like Pop-Tarts and I wasn't smoking or drinking then, but I just wasn't doing anything. And so then I spent a period of time kind of wafting around, not really sure how to implement. Started naturopathic college, was learning along the way what I was supposed to do even more so. And then I was coming upon 50 or I'm sorry, 40. And I was like, God, I better train for menopause. Cause when my mom hit menopause, it was a train wreck. She went from this beautiful, tiny little thing to just really having her metabolic health go sideways. And my mentor had always taught me that metabolic health was the crux of everything. Keep your waist circumference low, keep your like back in the 90s, he was telling me to get off the treadmill and start lifting weights.
Wow.
In the 90s.
That was not cool then.
No, and he told me to quit eating white foods, all white foods, meaning, starches, carbs, focus on protein. And so I had been around it. I knew better. I'd been around it for a long time. And finally I was like, I got to just walk the talk.
So you basically you saw your mom go through menopause, and when you say metabolic health, basically what that means is she became quite overweight?
Yes, and then you end up in this pre-diabetic state, which is, they call it metabolic syndrome, which
Yeah.
a lot of people are walking, what the last stats, we have 2018 stats that were published in 2021 showing that close to, I think, 94% of US adults have cardiometabolic compromise. So it's this pre-diabetes state, this phase 1, if you will, stage 1, some people call it. And so back then they called it Syndrome X. It was brand new. Nobody had appreciated it. And so it was this conglomerate of symptoms and they didn't really know what to do with it, but you stay on that trajectory and you will end up with type 2 diabetes at some point. You just suddenly arrive and your numbers match on labs and your doctor's like, "Congratulations, you have type 2." Well, that damage has been happening for, 10, 15, 20 years sometimes.
Oh, man. Yeah, I saw this thing the other day and it kind of made me giggle on the internet. It's like when you try to lose weight, you avoid sugar, carbs, seed oils, do 24-hour prolonged fasts, and go carnivore. When you want your dog to lose weight, you put less food in the bowl and you walk him more. So, like, what is the answer? Should we just eat less and walk more? Or is it actually more complex than that for those of us today?
It's all of it. It's both. And this is where the calories in, calories out people wanna fight with the insulin resistance people,
Right.
and it's both. And so the way that I like to think about it is we have certain metabolic pathways and they exist in a counterbalance. Not to get too nerdy, but I most simplistically, we have this AMPK, this AMP kinase pathway, which helps get your mitochondria revving. It helps people feel better when they have their AMPK pathway revved up. It also, when too high, can become catabolic, meaning it starts to waste you. This is where I think high dose GLP-1 comes into being a problem is
Big.
it revs the AMPK. On the other side, we have mTOR, and mTOR is like your muscle building. You rev that pathway through strength training and through eating more protein.
Mhm.
And when that pathway is too high, and insulin resistance can actually push it pathologically. When that side's too high, you end up with modern diseases like cancer.
Mhm.
So in my head, it's a balance. So we need to be doing a buffet of all the things.
God, it's so annoying. I think for people listening today, you're like, "God, I have so many things that I need to do to change my life. I'm just trying to be a little bit fitter. I wanna look a little bit sexier. I wanna have a longer life or a healthier lifespan." But there's so much, and there's so much information. Like, I saw this comparison of the historical food pyramid versus a modern day food pyramid, and I'd be curious your take on it. Basically, the inverted pyramid, which they're calling like the low carb food pyramid, kind of sounds like what your doctor friend was talking to you about, is like at the top. So the least amount, we have those high in carbohydrates, starchy vegetables, nuts and seeds, low sugar fruits. And then in the middle, we should be doing a lot of low carb fruits and vegetables. And then at the bottom, we should be doing the most whole fat, dairy, and proteins, fats and oils, etc. Is that right versus the inverse of what we used to be? And is it too simplistic to say that that is right for everybody?
I think it's too simplistic to say. I think everybody's a little bit different. You can over carnivore yourself into insulin resistance. High levels of arachidonic acid can send you into insulin resistance as well. So the way that I like to think about it is A, just eat real food.
Mhm.
Get enough protein. What does that mean? We could go high protein, we could go lower protein. I think it depends on the individual. I think it depends on their age. I think it depends on their goals, how active they are, how fit they are. But generally speaking, a gram of protein per pound of body weight is a great goal. So for women our size, I'm sorry, I'm thinking 90 to 120 grams is a minimum goal, and then more if you're, pregnant or you're lifting a lot of weight. Make sure you get a variety of colors in your diet.
Mm.
And then as we get older, understand that we become more insulin resistant, period. As we age as women and we lose our estrogen stores, we become more insulin resistant, period. And the more muscle mass we lose with age and atrophy, because that's just a normal part of aging as we start to atrophy everywhere, that we will become more insulin resistant. So in my head, the goal is always to keep insulin sensitivity going, whatever that looks like. So I've carnivored myself into insulin resistance. So
Wow.
this is the people who say, I got fatter on carnivore. What's happening? They're inducing an insulin resistance. The women who show up in my clinic and I've been treating them since they were your age. And then all of a sudden they show up and they're closer to my age. And they're like, I don't know what happened. This like 15 to 20 pounds just showed up. I haven't changed anything. That's low key insulin resistance. And it
Mm.
may not even be showing up on labs yet. It can be happening at a cellular level, and the symptomology is what I go off of. I don't care what their labs say. If they're exhibiting signs of insulin resistance, i.e. random weight gain that doesn't make sense, it's not adding
Mhm.
up. So there's no reason to make it crazy. We have to move every day. We're primates, we're fancy mammals with opposable thumbs.
Yep.
We are a lever system. We are an upright lever system. We are
Mm.
designed to pick up heavy shit and put it down. We are designed to ambulate and walk. So
Mm.
like it doesn't need to be crazy. I don't know. We get so off track, and I think the internet's very polarizing, and I think people create content that's clickbaity so people will follow, but it becomes very confusing for the average person. And I have been singing the same song for decades, which is eat more meat, lift weights. Deadlifts fix a lot of things, especially, if you can get yourself heavy. And what is heavy? That is really up to the individual. It's
Mm.
different. We probably have a different version of heavy, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yours is bigger than mine.
no, I'm
I
sure
think
you lift
so.
way more than me. I think that sleep is critical. And
Mhm.
we as a society I think it's coming around, but my generation, it was cool to not sleep. It was like the less sleep you could
Yeah,
get by on, the cooler you were.
totally.
My generation, Gen X, was raised up on that heroin chic skinny look. So it was like the skinnier you could be. So we all pretty much like wasted ourselves away into sarcopenia, walked into our middle age with no muscle, and then wondering why my age
What is
cohort.
sarcopenia?
It's just this, it's muscle wasting. It's poverty of the flesh. That's literally the translation, is
Oof.
poverty of the flesh. So as we age and we become more inflamed through the aging process, we literally start to waste. And then its sister is cachexia, and that is an inflammatory induced, like when people are sick with cancer or they've come through a terrible viral illness. You've seen people come out of COVID
Yeah.
wasted away. That's cachexia.
Mm.
And once those processes start, it's almost like a feed forward mechanism. So you've heard, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talk about how the older you get, the more protein you need, the more you need to be focusing on this, which seems unfair. I'm 50 and I'm like, dude, I just want to chill. I've been fighting my
Yeah.
body my whole life.
Yep, yep.
So the key is to not fight the body, chill the F out, because I think women in particular, they think, okay, Orange Theory, CrossFit, I'm going to hit it hard. As we get into menopause, that becomes less, the success rate goes down there.
Wow.
We need stimulation, but I really think in many cases we need to find what works for our bodies and not drive that cortisol. I think the intensity level as we get older needs to be modulated more for the individual.
So as we get older or as you get older as a woman, you should do less Orange Theory by and large, less intense cardio and more weightlifting.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. And I like strength training because you can gauge it for the individual. You can take longer breaks between sets.
Yeah.
You can increase the weight. You can increase the reps. You can play with the tension, time under tension. You can pace the move so that we're just doing, really slow eccentric and then more explosive concentric. Like whatever it takes, I think it can be modulated much more for the individual, depending on where they're at, what their orthopedic faults are, how old they are.
That's actually really helpful because, like, my husband, for instance, is a former Navy SEAL. So he's a psychopath, like Gabrielle's husband. And he will always say intensity, intensity, intensity. But for instance, for many times, I already have a lot of stress at work.
Yes.
And I run like at a pretty high stress level as is. And so when I'm in the gym, I like lifting heavy, but I don't love that butterfly in the chest,
Yep.
heavy sprint feeling. And, he would say historically, well, that's what you have to do if you want to get results. And it's interesting because my body's kind of been like, nah, I don't think that's not it for me anymore. But there's actually science that backs that you don't have to go into the gym as you get older and heavy breathe, psychopath, sweating everywhere to have longevity success as a woman.
I don't I don't think it's necessary. And I think people will argue across the board. I do think it's important, Dr. Stacy Sims talks about making sure that you get certain levels of intensity in increments. She calls it sprint interval training. So
Mhm.
you're doing these short increments of high intensity and then you're resting. And I always say rest as long as you need. That might be 3 to
Mm.
5 minutes. It doesn't have to be these short intervals of rest either. And make sure you completely get back to having easy breathing and then go hit it again. So I might do that on the rower. I love the Airdyne bike, the assault bike. I will just hit it until I count to about 20 to 30 before I feel my whole system shaking.
Mhm.
And then I just get off and wander around the gym for a while and, go do something else. Men are different than women, and women at your age are different than women in menopause. And so I find when I crank up the intensity too high, I blow up. I just get fatter everywhere. And it's cortisol. It's because I have enough cortisol. My life is also quite stressful. And I end up in this sort of like chronic cortisol state where I'm puffy and bloated, but cortisol is
Right.
also catabolic. Cortisol chews up your tissues. So if we're cranking cortisol in the gym, but we're trying to gain muscle, you can see where intensity needs to be dialed in for the individual. And that's going to be different for all of us. So I can't work out like Gabrielle.
Yeah.
If I tried, I would die. I
Yeah,
feel like
me
I'm
too.
dying and it's not helpful. And my sleep gets messed up and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to faint when I stand up from a squatted position. Like my adrenals are like, no, do not
So
do this to us.
how do you know when a workout is right for you or not? How does a woman listening to this go, okay, I need to work out more and more intensely. I need to do less. How do you listen to your body correctly? What's the way to know?
I think you should feel better when you leave the gym
Mm.
than you came in. You should feel invigorated. You should feel like you got a boost. You should feel like it's going to carry you through your day. You should feel like your mood's improved. You should not feel like you want to make a sweat angel on the floor and stay there. And you should not have to go lie down on the couch. Sometimes I do have to go sit in the car for a few minutes after a workout and just kind of like recalibrate my nervous system. And then the next day, you should feel better, not worse. You might be a little sore, but you shouldn't feel like, God, I feel like I got hit with a truck. That's your adrenals saying, no, do not do
Interesting.
this. So I think that the intensity level needs to be dialed for the individual. It's really, really important. And we need to consider the implications of cortisol because if you're a middle-aged woman, you're stressed out of your mind, you're insulin resistant by nature because your hormones are waning. Now you're trying to do these long intermittent fasts. You're trying to do hardcore intensity training because you're like, I got to keep up. I could do it 10 years ago. And these women come in, they're hitting a wall and they are literally blowing up. Usually right here is the indication.
So, oh, your midsection is an indication of I am actually working out incorrectly and eating incorrectly. And it's not just that I should just walk more and eat less.
Yes. The walking's great. Always. I think it's nice and calm. Walking it keeps your sense. We want to hone the central nervous system. And the way I think about the central nervous system is we want to hit it to get a hormetic impact, meaning hormesis is, for the listeners, is just this concept of strategic intervals of stress. And then the key to hormetic stress is to rest the organism after and
Mm,
refeed. So
mm.
we want to hit it. So you might leave like maybe you PR'd your deadlift that day and you know what that feels like. So have you ever cried after?
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
it's not because you're happy. It's because your nervous system just went, right?
I thought I was happy, but
Well,
now,
you are, but
yeah,
like you're crying and you're like,
yeah,
I don't know what's happening right now. And
right.
that's your nervous system going, which is great if you spend the next 2 days chilling, maybe doing, and that doesn't mean laying on, sitting your ass on the couch all day, but you're doing some gentle movement. You might choose yoga, you might choose walking, you might choose swimming, whatever. Maybe you go for a hike with your husband or whatever, and your cute dog. And then you refeed.
Yeah.
And then that hormetic hit was therapeutic. It wasn't catabolic.
I just think that's so beautiful because, if you're listening out there and you feel like everybody's always telling you to do more and to keep going and you're not enough. And, yes, you should be rich and you should be happily married and you should have 2 kids and you should have great girlfriends. You should also have a six pack.
Right.
You just need to know that that's ridiculous. And it's okay to not have all of that at once. In fact, that would be ridiculous to have all of that at once. And also, I think it's so liberating to know, yeah, we need to move more, probably. Yeah, we need to eat a little bit less, maybe a tiny bit less drinking, but also there's some real things out there where it's not always just do more.
And you got
Could
to
actually be do
live.
less. Yeah.
Like a drink might actually, and I'm not like saying go drink, but a glass of wine to celebrate might actually lower your cortisol and allow you to have a happier homeostasis inside your body. Think of it that way. We're always trying to go towards homeostasis. So if you're trying to work out with your husband and you're trying to keep pace and you're like, I don't feel right, then listen to that. Go do something else. Maybe
Yeah.
you just go you go lift slow and heavy and you get a couple sets in and you're like, I'm good. My husband the other day was watching me work out and he came over. He's like, you're done. Like he could just see it. I started shaking and my form was falling apart. And he's like, you're done. You've had a stressful week. We're done. We're leaving. So I think that's important.
I like this husband of yours.
He's downstairs.
Oh, is
He's
he?
probably
Oh,
playing
I
with your
can't
dog.
wait to meet him. I brought my husband to work today too.
Oh, good.
We could have our husbands and the doggo together.
He's a good old farmer. And I want to add too, I think this is important. You asked me like, how do I look good at 51? I do think there's something to, and you mentioned six packs. I think there's something as women age, and I know that other trainers will back me up on this. As women hit middle age, we look better with a little bit of fat. We just keep like I had
Yeah.
a woman in her 60s, an influencer, beautiful, very fit woman. She said, "How does your face look great?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't think my face looks that great, but thank you." But I'm like, it's fat. Like it's actually there still. Like
Yeah.
I think leaning out to the point of that, because then you have to fill it with something.
Yeah.
And that starts getting weird.
And there's a lot of studies that also back that men actually like women who have a little bit of fat on them because it leads to more higher predictability for fertility, right? Not too much.
Right.
But is that true? I've heard that.
Yes, yes. And also, our estrogen stores are in our fat. So when we lose ovarian function, it is our fat cells that make the estrogen. And they make a form called estrone, which I don't think is as nearly as good as the estradiol that our ovaries make when we're younger, but that is this is my little estrogen depot, my little pooch. I mean, I
Mhm.
would love to have my six-pack abs back again, but also every time I lose too much weight, my hormones go in the toilet. And I've had
Wow.
patients who got tummy tucks and they show up and they're batshit crazy. And they're like, "What's wrong with me?" I'm like, "You literally just sucked out all your fat, which was all of your hormonal depot." So, and of course, I'm supplementing hormones as I age, but your fat stores are sort of your lifeline to a lot of things. And so, keeping that super shredded look as a woman, I don't think it's great for longevity.
I cannot wait to tell my husband that, this is just my anti-crazy.
It
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
It
Well, he's
is.
actually always the one that's like, "You need to chill on losing weight." Well, I have a question about that, though. So, I'm getting older, and I absolutely do feel, whether it's true or not, that my metabolism is slowing down. Is that real? Are there ways around it? Can we keep our metabolism as we age?
Supposedly the metabolism is not slowing. That's what data shows, which I know, I'm in the same boat. What I think is happening is we're having hormonal shifts. And like I said, the estrogen shifts will cause the insulin to shift because insulin's a hormone at the end of the day. And then we're having, I think, well, no, I don't think, I know as our estrogen starts to shift, our tolerance to stress goes down. So women do not tolerate stress the way men do. Women do not tolerate lack of sleep the way men do. Women do not tolerate consistent intensity the way men do. And so as our estrogen is waning, that gets worse and worse and worse and harder to deal with. And cortisol will make you put fat on in weird places.
Mm.
And then I think thirdly, we're losing muscle mass. And so this is why the lifting is non-negotiable. Like it's just non-negotiable. I was telling people a long time ago on the internet to eat meat and deadlift when all the influencers were like, just do yoga and go vegan. And it was not popular.
You're
And I'm so
right.
glad that, folks like Dr. Gabrielle have finally gotten the message out that women are in Dr. Stacy Sims. It's like, this is non-negotiable if you want to age well. And it's not about looking hot. It's about not breaking a hip.
That is what yeah, you had this quote that I loved, which is, "When in doubt, deadlift. Need to make a big decision but feel unsure, deadlift. Need to process anger or frustration, deadlift. Want to find calm zen on a chaotic day, deadlift. Deadlifts fix nearly everything and always bring calm clarity." Why do you like deadlifts so much?
I think it's because it hits that central nervous system hard enough that you get that whomp. And this is where lifting light doesn't give it to you.
Mm,
So I understand that I have some pretty serious spinal orthopedic issues and I cannot deadlift the way I used to under the kind of weight that I used to. So I cannot get that whomp the same way, but it's not the same whomp that you get from, orange theorying yourself into exhaustion. There's just something about a heavy central nervous system hit. And then in the Strong First community, which is like the Russian KGB kettlebell community, they always say leave one in the tank.
mm,
Right? And so you get that womp, but you leave one in the tank and you come out with superpowers. I think
yeah.
I stole that from Tim Ferriss. I think it was Tim Ferriss I heard a long time ago say, when you need to make a big decision, I think he was counseling some CEOs and that he was telling their team, like, when you need to make a big decision, go deadlift and then make the decision. So that's my rule. Like, if I have to make a big decision about something, I will lift and then I will sleep before I decide anything. And then when I wake up, it's usually the same decision I came to before that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I promise myself that I will exhaust my nervous energy, I will sleep, and then I will wake up and I will decide.
And that's how you have better decision making.
I think so.
3 steps. I like that. You have talked about the science surrounding who you surround yourself with. What happens depending on the people that you choose to spend time with? Does that matter?
I think so. I think it does, and the data is showing that our microbiomes are contagious. And well, going back many years, I had my daughter. I was just married to like a complete loser, and I had a child with him. And I don't mean to speak disparagingly of him, but many years later, the daughter has concluded as well. That was not a good decision, but I got my beautiful daughter on this planet because of it. So I think 5 months postpartum, I was super depressed. I went to visit my buddy and like 2 of my best friends in Seattle, and they were, my friends from, like, high school. And my friends, he was working for Microsoft and he had really risen the ranks and he was making good money. And he said, and I'm sure people have heard this, you can't fly with the eagles if you're hanging out with the turkeys,
Mhm.
right? And so, or the turkey vultures or something like that. And I was driving home from Seattle and that's all I could think about. And it was something that hung with me, that and there's been other points in my life where I've had to make decisions and be like, this is not my circle of influence. This
Mhm.
cannot be my circle of influence. I have to, you have to be in the room with the people that are more successful. You have to be the dumbest person in the room. You have to be the
Mhm.
poorest person in the room so that you can continue to up level and be around these people who mirror it and make it look easy, right? Like I'm sure you started there too. And
Mhm.
you go to some mastermind and you're
Totally.
like, this guy sitting next to me has 5 businesses and makes $1 billion a year, and he's not that smart, but
Mhm.
he's innovative and he's got this cool thing. So, like, what's my innovative cool thing? And when it comes to health, our microbiomes are also very contagious, literally
Mhm.
contagious. So, if you're living with somebody who has type 2 diabetes, if you're living with somebody who has any number of diseases, we have data showing that that is quite contagious. So you could very well end up with high blood pressure if they have high blood pressure. And I know it sounds crazy, but the actual microbiome will rub off. My buddy is a microbiome expert, and he was Karan Krishnan. You should have him on your show. He's brilliant. He was sharing that a study a few years ago where one person in the family took an antibiotic, and the entire family's microbiome shifted within days. So, communicable and non-communicable diseases, I think, are transferable via microbiome. And then also just health. Like, how do you how do you stay motivated? Because it's discipline, not motivation. But if the person you're married to is not also disciplined, we have a problem, right? We have a mismatch. And so I think it's important. And your friend cohorts and the people you're eating food with and the food choices you're making and the how late are we staying up choices we're
Yeah.
making and all the choices.
Well, it's fascinating because I didn't know from a health perspective that the science backs it, and that was fascinating. So I went down a little rabbit hole looking at some studies after I saw that quote from you. And what's fascinating is this: it's the same thing for productivity. So there's great studies that show that your productivity increases by about 15% if you sit in a 25 square foot radius of a high performer, and it decreases by about 30% if you sit next to a underperformer. So
Wow.
there's actually like, a asymmetric downside to it in some
Wow.
ways. And then the same thing is definitely true for money. So it seems that money is contagious as well. So is divorce, I saw.
Yeah.
Your likelihood of getting divorced increases if you are around people and quite close that get divorced.
There's even data that they don't talk about much anymore, but several years ago, before the healthy at every size movement really took hold, um, and I'm not saying that's a improper movement. I think it's more of a hypothesis. I do believe everybody should love their body at every size. I mean, disclaimer, it's just we also cannot glorify pathologic states of being, right? Um,
Yep.
but the data was going around before it was getting censored, and they showed in one study that if you have even 5 friends on the internet, just internet proximity, not in real person, who are struggling with obesity, your chances of becoming obese are exponentially higher. So I don't, it's not just microbiome, it's our brain's mirror, right?
Yeah.
Our mirror neurons in our brain. And who knows? But all that to say, I try to surround myself, and I'm not talking about leanness or fatness. It's not about that. It's about people who just take care of their health and prioritize their health, period, whatever size that comes in, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's important to me is like being around people who actually get it, who also prioritize it. Prioritizing it, I guess would be the word.
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny too because these days, like if you say, "Nah, I'm not really drinking right now. No, I don't eat those types of food. No, I only do this." You're sort of criticized in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. But if you eat all the junk food, you do whatever you want, you don't work out. There's no criticism allowed. That's actually perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And
It's
so we've kind
weird.
of gone upsy downsy, topsy turvy world
Yes.
and we've lost our collective minds, and I think part of, like, what I've learned about getting fit is, like, if you want to get fit, if you want to get financially free, you have to be okay setting boundaries for other people to stay out of if they are not going to help you progress.
Yep.
Because we are just not strong enough as individual willpowered beings to have willpower all the time against everything. So even if the science didn't show that it's literally not even up to you, it just transfers in your
Yeah.
microbiome. Even, willpower, I mean, think about it for a second. Am I going to be healthier at the end of the day if I'm hanging out with you and Gabrielle Lyon? You guys don't drink, you lift every single day, you eat real foods, you have healthy and happy marriages, you work on things that you love and care about. Is it going to be more likely that I will be more of those things because you are them and that's all I'm around? As opposed to if I'm hanging out with, like you talked about, the punk rockers that you're with back in the day, everybody's smoking, everybody's drinking.
Ooh.
It's just hard to stand against what the entire tribe's doing.
Yeah, my friends did not generally age well from that time period.
Yeah.
I quit smoking when I was 24, and I remember just like them calling me saying, "Where are you? You're not at the bar, you're not hanging out." And I'm like, "I can't hang out with you guys anymore. Like I just can't hang out with you
Did
anymore."
you say that directly?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when I got married, so I've been married 3 times, not successful in the first 2. When I married this husband, I literally, and some people will disagree with me, I cut off several of my male friends because they had shown interest in me in the past at some point, whether I'd been friends with them since we were like teenagers or not. And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't, I can't have any of those things in my life. Not when I
Yeah.
want this life. So I
100%.
cut people off, and maybe it's because I'm an Aquarius and I'm good at it. But if somebody's not showing that it's not that I need them to be doing the same thing as me or that I even need them to help me get somewhere. It's just we need to be in alignment as we move through life together. And the older I get, and you'll experience this too, your circle gets much tighter as you get older because you just have less tolerance for bullshit, period. And it's just easier to be like, yeah, there's nothing here. It's not that I need them to serve me, but it needs to be reciprocal. Something needs to be, an upside for me to stay in that friendship. And so I'm a big fan of just like, especially during COVID and those days, I was like, just, if these people are torturing you to do something you don't want to do or to participate in some grand experiment that you don't want to be a part of, then like, fuck them.
Yeah. Opt out. Opt
That's
out.
not that hard.
I love
These are
that.
not your friends, And
No.
my husband's made it really clear for me. I'll say, my friend, blah, blah, blah. And then this happened. He's like, that's not a friend. And so just learning what those definitions are. He's like, that might be an acquaintance, but that person definitely doesn't have your best interest at heart. I just read a study yesterday that women who encourage you to cut your hair off are actually and I didn't read the whole thing. I read the abstract. Basically, they are seeing you as competition in mating, in the mating world. So they are encouraging you to cut your hair off to be less valuable. Or
What?
perceived as, so like basically it was like if your girlfriend's telling you to cut your hair off, she's not your friend kind of thing, which as a girl who spent her whole life with short hair, I'm like a short-haired girl by nature. I don't know if I entirely agree with that because
Yeah.
like I am in my power and sassy when I have short hair,
Yeah.
but there is that was an interesting take on it.
I actually agree with it. I don't even need to see the science on that. I think if
Yeah.
somebody else is telling you to cut, well, especially if you're, if you're single, dudes just like chicks with long hair typically,
Yeah.
by and large,
Hair's a
statistically.
thing.
Yeah, it's just whatever. And so that's hysterical. So one great red flag for friends is, do they tell you to cut your hair or not?
Well,
And
girls
if
are
they
weird.
do,
Yeah, girls are weird. Girls are don't Have you noticed that? It doesn't ever go away. Even if they're your best friend. There's
yeah,
just this weird low key resource guard. I think we're evolutionary built, we're built for that. Women are built to resource guard
yeah.
because they're looking for the viable males in the population that will give them good offspring and also protect them. And there's less of those than there are women who are fertile. So I think it's just evolutionary that we,
Yeah. That actually tracks. It makes me feel a little bit better though. I've gotten older, I've gotten a little bit more comfortable saying, like, I feel jealousy. That happened the other day. I have a wonderful friend, Vanessa Van Edwards, who's on the internet too. She's one of my dear friends. I adore her. And she's hyper talented. She's incredible. And she got this opportunity. And my immediate reaction was jealousy. It was like immediate. It wasn't, I was excited for her. It wasn't this, it was, fuck, really? Why'd she get that? Not me. And then I was like, ew, yuck,
yeah.
gross. I hate that that was my immediate reaction. And then, I thought about it. I'm like, why am I jealous of her? And I was like, well, because she's really in what I call like flow. Like she just, she's in this period in her life, which I have envy about, which is where like things come to her. She's kind of aligned things in her life how she wants it. And she's flowing. And some days I feel like I'm grinding,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's really an envy of like, the decisions that she's made, some of the choices. And so I struggled with that for a minute. And then I called her and I was like, I have to tell you something weird. This happened to you, and I'm now very excited for you, but I was jealous at first. I just wanted to tell you that, like, I'm so happy for you, and I'm sorry I felt a moment of jealousy about that, and, like, you're gonna crush it, and it's gonna be amazing, and now the story I'm telling myself is, like, you doing that means that I get to do that more, but
Right.
I would feel like a weird friend if I didn't call you and say, "Ugh, I had this gnarly thing I felt, and now I'm trying to move through it," but I think it's also, like, acknowledging that we probably all get that, and I called another friend of mine, Kim, and told her about it, and she was like, "Cody, every time I go into a bookstore and I see, like, my 5 friends who have best-selling books up there, I go, 'Fuck, why didn't I write a book?'"
Yeah.
She goes, "I feel that all the time."
Yeah.
And so I think it's really nice that we're honest, like, you can be honest with your friends. I felt a little jealousy because that is so cool, that thing that you're doing. But you're right, it's probably actually genetic.
I think it's evolutionary.
It's evolutionary, that's the right
Yeah.
word.
I had a friend, uh, recently I was talking to, and I was telling her how completely dialed in I saw her business and how I was jealous, like, straight up, like, your landing pages are beautiful, your copy's beautiful, your ads are converting, everything's so beautiful. And I'm over here like throwing shit at the wall, hoping it sticks. And sometimes it sticks and I make $1 million and sometimes it doesn't stick. And it's just I just had like an abysmal launch happen that
Oh,
did not
yeah.
convert. And I was like, I clearly missed the mark on that. And she just looked at me in shock and she's like, I've been so jealous of you all year. Like you're always on all these
Mm.
podcasts and you've been doing all this stuff. And I'm like, girl, it's wearing me out.
Yeah,
Like being on
yeah,
planes and you're off in Aruba on vacation and like doing
totally.
all this. You look great in a bikini and I'm over here with like cortisol puff. And so
Yeah,
it's just one of those moments where we both just had the complete opposite read
yeah.
so
But it helps when you say it out loud, which is in a weird way, less gossipy and more like, acknowledgement of a real feeling that is true and honest. And I think it's helpful when people hear people who are like kind of successful in one way or the other share it too, because they're like, oh, it's not just so many times you listen to podcasts, you're like, they seem to have it figured out.
oh
Cool. I'll
yeah.
just go, grab my bag of Cheetos and listen to Netflix and like fuck this whole thing. And so I like that we get to be honest about it.
I think it's the quote I heard I love is, "Look for the expanders and
Mm,
then thank them." And so
mm,
the minute I heard that, I immediately texted Gabrielle and I was like, "Thank you." Like I see her and I just think, "Oh, more is possible."
yeah,
And I see you too and I'm like, "More is possible." Like there's levels to this video game.
totally.
So it's just a matter and you don't have to hit all the levels and also there's seasons,
Yeah.
right? And there's seasons to rest and there's seasons to pull back and there's seasons to push and grind. It's just like the gym. You can't grind all the time.
No.
And you can't go metabolic all the time, like, there has to be windows here.
100%. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is talking about other things that happen to women. And then I want to get to something that's applicable to everybody. But is there data that shows lately that it is harder for women to get pregnant than it has been before? Because it feels like that.
Our fertility rates are in the toilet. Yeah, we're in trouble. I think we're going extinct, honestly, as a species.
What's happening?
It's a lot of things, and I can't say with, certainty because that's not entirely my wheelhouse, but I was seeing it early on in practice. I got licensed in 2008, and I was seeing it in practice early. A lot of young women coming in having issues. The way it's handled is weird. They give you drugs to, get your eggs to basically shoot out, or your ovaries to
Right.
shoot out an egg. And there's a lot if you look at animal husbandry, they really have an appreciation for, like, hypothyroidism being the cause of infertility and, low progesterone can be a contributor to holding on to that pregnancy. And so that is the way I've always approached it is
Mm,
making sure just to optimize a woman's, get the toxins out of her life, get her moving, deal with her metabolic dysfunction, and then thyroid and progesterone. But I think we're in a whole different world now at this point with the intervention of 2021 I think is a potential factor. We have data on that. I'm not making it up. I'm not trying to fearmonger. And then we've got abysmal fertility in men. We've got, plummeting testosterone rates. So their swimmers are not swimming so well. And I
mm,
think overarching is this metabolic dysfunction
yeah.
that I've been trying to beat the drum on for a long time. And it was not sexy. And thank God, Dr. Casey Means came out with her book and people are paying attention now. But I have been trying to get people. My mentor told me, keep your waist circumference in check at all costs and lift weights. Like, do not let the metabolic dysfunction get you and we're seeing it in younger and younger and younger, I mean, children with severe metabolic dysfunction. And that does not bode well for fertility because a body that is metabolically compromised is not going to want to reproduce.
Yeah.
So I think we're in a we're in a pickle. And then I'm hearing from my friends that are your age telling me that all their girlfriends are getting, IVF,
All of them.
which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I would say I have about 15% of my girlfriends who have done it naturally. Almost
Really?
everybody else, yeah, and maybe even 10% if you include, like, turkey basting or whatever that's called,
Yeah.
where you is that the scientific term? I think so. So,
Just get it up there.
yeah, exactly.
Lay back and get it done.
But
That's crazy.
yeah, and these are women, and not all of them are women who work, who might have, like, more stress. It's sort of across the gambit, and I would say from ages, like, 30 to, let's call it 41. I'm seeing all of them struggle with it by and large. I mean, I have a couple girlfriends that are on their, like, their 7th, 8th, ninth IVF
Oh
round.
my god, and that does terrible things. That's the problem, is that hormonal load that these women go through is just wreaking havoc on their metabolic health, so they're becoming less and less and less fertile through the process of IVF.
Oof.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah, but the wild thing is that why don't doctors talk to women about that? Why do they just go, "You can't get pregnant. Your blood level's fine, the swimmers are fine-ish," whatever they think fine means by average today. They don't really check for thyroid stuff. They don't ask at all about what your health is otherwise, and then they just tell you, "Let's begin IVF." Why
Because
is
that's
that?
their hammer, and that hammer's profitable. It's their hammer, like every doctor is gonna have their hammer. My hammer in my practice was needles. I was
Mhm.
like, "Well, let's stick a needle in it. Let's see what can we change in the tissue? What can we change in your immune response if we inject it?" Chiropractors adjust, naturopathic doctors give supplements, you know. It's their hammer, and so orthopedists are gonna do orthopedic surgery, and, rehab docs are gonna rehab you all day. And I think we're seeing, actually, the cool part in the last 10 years is I'm seeing a lot less turf wars and a lot more doctors coming together, especially since 2020. It was very
Mhm.
clear there was, like, team freedom
Yep.
and everything else. And so that's been very cool, because a lot of people have come over to the functional medicine side because they've seen, like, wait a minute, the system is they lied to us. I'm like, welcome. They've been lying to us for a long
Right.
time. Right. And so, like, it didn't, I knew 20 years ago that Big Pharma was quite corrupt. So over here, I think we started melding more, and I'm hoping that that translates. But I don't know. I'm concerned. I think in most countries in the world, what I have seen is that there's not even a population being born to replace the population. So we are at a certain point, there's a critical point where there's of no return. And I think South Korea has definitely hit it. And there's other
Mhm.
countries, and the US is on the precipice, but
Japan's approaching.
we're a train wreck of health here, and we have exported it out.
Yeah. Yeah, remember when we all thought Elon was crazy because he said that we needed to increase the population control? And you probably didn't. You probably realized that was real. And now it's like, no, Elon was right. We should be having more babies. And actually that we shouldn't be doing what the, World Health Organization was telling us, which was actually decrease population
Yeah.
size.
All my girlfriends who are did not participate in the intervention of 2021 and seem to be having babies very easy. Like,
Yeah.
all my closest girlfriends are breathing like it's every time I swear to God, they get out of that gauntlet of breastfeeding and everything, and all of a sudden they're like, "Tina, I'm pregnant again." And they're all walking the walk, right? They're all living
Yeah.
very healthfully. I'm like, "Have as many babies as humanly possible. We need you. Like, we need that.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Like, the healthy, vital, natural, like, keep going. If you're happy with it and you're having fun, keep going."
Well, you know what I like about you is you're honest about, corrupt practices in big pharma. You will say very head on that there were interventions you didn't like in medicine that you thought were systematically wrong, even, and that you think that there's a massive fertility crisis as engineered, maybe by the external environment, but also how doctors are handling it. But then you also have some really interesting take on GLP-1s, or as many people know it as, Ozempic. And so, what is your take on this drug or series of drugs? Are they bad? Are they good?
So they're peptides. And when I realized that they were peptides, I immediately got more intrigued, because a peptide is just a string of amino acids. And you were saying your husband likes peptides. A lot of people you really can't age into middle age and be active and fit and not at some point come around to peptides,
Mm.
because you end up in pain. and you
Yep.
end up with
It's true.
injuries, right?
Yeah.
And so the peptide community is really expanding. I think we're finding, ease of execution with a lot of these oral forms of different peptides, BPC 157, TB 500, these, Wolverine peptides. There's all kinds of different peptides out there. And peptides by nature insert themselves, they're just strings of amino acids that are peptide bound together to make peptides. And then strings of peptides are just proteins.
Hmm.
That's the complexity of it. That's where it gets. And so peptides insert themselves where they need to go and they do their magic. Um, it just so happens that these peptides are over here in the big pharma bucket. I think it's because of the way that they are administered, injection wise. And so I started researching them because it was, when was it? A couple summers ago. And there was just spring, summer. It was everywhere I looked. There was so much hype about it. And the weirdest part was the entire functional medicine community it was all sounding very propagandized. Like in 2020, immediately my ears perked up and I'm like, this sounds like propaganda.
Mhm.
And indeed, here we are. So it was the same kind of thing. I was this clickbaity nonsense I was seeing mainstream media. And then I was hearing the functional medicine and the medical freedom community also preaching the same message. Like, when do those two align?
Yeah.
That was weird. So immediately I was like, this smells sus. So I start looking into it and I find stacks of data showing from tip to toe really amazing regenerative healing and anti-inflammatory properties, really potent anti-inflammatory properties to these peptides.
Wow.
They're not just working by decreasing your, stomach motility. They're not just making you feel fuller longer. They're not just shutting down your appetite in your brain. They're not that's not where it ends. They actually are healing metabolic pathways, which the crux, in my opinion, the crux of most modern diseases is metabolic dysfunction. And we are all to some degree. I mean, if 94% of US adults are metabolically compromised, then that's 94% of your listeners.
Yeah.
Maybe yours are a bit better because, maybe our listeners of our pods are more educated, but generally speaking. And so I don't know what I think part of it was just me being I tried to make a podcast about it and come out and talk about it. And the pushback I got was so fierce and ferocious. And it was very reminiscent of 2020 when I was telling people to eat meat, go outside, lift weights. You don't need to be a sitting duck.
Mhm.
Like viruses aren't, there's a high, there's a high success rate of getting through all of these things if you go into it with good metabolic health and you start taking and even small steps today will translate into more potent and robust immune response. And it was very much like that. And I was like, this is weird. Even the bots, I was getting the same kind of bot. You've probably gotten a lot of bot messages. You know them when you see them, right? And you go
Oh,
look at
yeah.
the profile and you're like, this is a bot. So I'm getting this parroted response, just eat less and move more, just eat less and move more. And I'm like, no, I didn't mention weight loss. I was talking about Parkinson's. No, I didn't mention weight loss. I was sharing a study about this. And they just kept coming in. The functional medicine community got pissed at me. Um, I went on Dr. Mark Hyman's podcast to debate Callie Means. He wouldn't listen. He was yelling over the top of me. It was very, very polarized of a topic. And I was like, what have I stumbled into here? And I'm
Wow.
so insubordinate. I just kept pushing. The more they push back on me, the more I'm just like that. I'm like, oh, you want to go? I'll go. Okay. So, and I will go like my favorite game is just obliterating people with data. So I'm like, oh, I got mountains over here and I can quote them. And I don't mean to be, that's not
No, I
probably,
love this
that's probably
about
my
you.
pathology.
Yes. Yes, let's
That's just,
go.
but that's, yeah, it's like, all right, let's go. And the more I pushed forward, I got a lot of heat, but I started getting people listening and then I started, I've got I don't have a following your size, but I have a decent size following. And
Yeah.
I started getting hundreds and now thousands of messages from people saying, thank you so much. These peptides have changed my life completely. And I have been living in so much shame. I can't talk about it with my family. Um, People who really did need it for type 2 diabetes, metabolic dysfunction, weight loss, which was not the conversation I was trying to have. I was trying to share out the neuroregenerative, the cardiovascular, all of the other benefits in the different organ systems that I was seeing, but everybody wanted to talk about weight loss. And these folks were messaging me saying, I was terrified. So-and-so terrified me. So-and-so influencer terrified me. The media terrified me. My doctor's been trying to get me to go on it. I finally did. And oh my gosh, my life has changed. And oh my gosh, I'm fertile now. And oh my gosh, my depression is gone. And oh my gosh, all my pain is gone. And oh my gosh, this one woman messaged me this wonderful message, older woman who had her metabolic health completely obliterated by chemotherapy treatment and cancer treatment. And she's in her 60s. And the weight gain was putting her at higher risk for the cancer coming back, right?
Mhm.
Because obesity is a standalone risk factor for multiple types of cancer.
Yeah.
And she said, "You keep going." Like, this was early on. She's like, "You keep going because I went on these and here's my story." And so, one woman messages me and says, finally could go on rides at Disneyland with my kids. And so I wasn't trying to be the weight loss warrior for GLP-1s. I wasn't trying to defend Ozempic for weight
Yeah.
loss, but it's turned into that on a lot of these podcasts because some of these hosts really that's the conversation they want to have. But I think at the end of the day, there is nuance. Oh, and the best part, the part that really got me intrigued, besides the neuroregenerative and anti-inflammatory impacts on the brain and its impacts on pain and its impacts on our immune system, and the protective, when I started talking about the data that I found from 2021 on the protective mechanism of semaglutide against COVID, I got deplatformed at 232,000 off Instagram. And there's data that came out last year showing it's correlative, it's not causative, but showing potential protective benefit against cancer. This is all data that's published, and things got a little heated at that point. I think I got in the crosshairs of big pharma. I don't know, but all of this to say, I think there's extreme potential for alcohol abuse syndrome, addiction, anything that's going off that dopamine dragon, as I call it. Those dopaminergic pathways are impacted, and we've now got all the data to support everything I was either had found or was speculating or had only had animal data on. We now have human data on most of it. And I just think there's a place for them. And I think
Yeah.
that they need to be done appropriately like any other peptide. And I don't think it's a monotherapy, like take high doses, good luck. I think obviously lifestyle is always number one. And I've been preaching metabolic health since day one. So I don't know how that message has gotten skewed. I'm not a big pharma shill. I may go to the fucking gym and eat enough protein and get your shit together person. And then we have tools.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use all the tools that I want to use that I have accessible to me. And I can prescribe in Oregon. So I'm going to use my prescription abilities. We have no problem. I was thinking about it in the shower this morning. Like somebody in the Maha movement was saying something about how they prefer food over big pharma. And I was like, this is really choice coming from, I'm not bashing the Maha movement. It's a generalized statement I'm making. It's really choice to me that people are okay with having their, thyroid hormone compounded or their hormone replacement, or because I could make an argument that most hormonal issues, aside from ovarian failure at menopause, most hormonal issues are lifestyle in nature. Like we burn out our thyroids, we burn out our hormones and when we're younger. And I could also make an argument that folks need for high blood pressure medication and statins are also lifestyle. I could make those arguments all day, but we don't vilify those people.
Yeah.
And then my best part was last night, I see a huge influencer who has been bashing on a doctor who's been bashing on GLP-1s and Ozempic for a year on every podcast he could get on himself on. And then he does a freaking reel on the benefits of BPC 157 because you can buy it in a pill and he can sell it to you.
Oh, I saw that one actually.
And I'm like, really? I
Yeah.
commented on it. I'm like, that's interesting. Because I know of a peptide that you've been bashing on that's also anti-inflammatory, healing, and regenerative. But
Yeah.
that one's not okay. It doesn't fit the storyline.
Well, I think that's the interesting part. It's like, um, when we become these like mono thinking individuals where we label ourselves anything, whether it's Maha or whether it's pharma or and we cannot deviate from our cultural group, I think we get into a big problem.
It's
And so
huge.
I never really trust someone who hasn't pushed back against not only the other side, but their side, because you have to be willing to do both in order to have like a reasonable, rational debate. Now, when you got deplatformed, why do you think that happened? Like,
Well, that was the month that Eli Lilly released their vials. So they had Zepbound is the brand name for so we've got semaglutide, which is made by Novo Nordisk, and semaglutide comes in Ozempic or Wegovy.
yeah,
Ozempic is FDA approved for type 2. Wegovy is approved for weight loss. On the Eli Lilly side, we have Mounjaro, and that would be Mounjaro is for type 2 FDA approved, and Zepbound is their version. Same thing, same peptides. They're just, well, these two are different, but you get what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
They're just approved for different things. They came out with their vials that month, actually that week, I think. And they had sent a lot of cease and desist letters to the telemedicine companies, the compounding pharmacists, the many doctors who were prescribing compounded. They really have, and Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly have been pushing very hard against the compounded. And at that time, I have been proposing microdoses or
Yeah.
a more personalized dosing strategy, I think would be a better term. And meaning that the starting dose, if you even if you're dealing with type 2 diabetes or obesity and that's what you're using it for, I think the starting dose in many cases can be too high and non-tolerable to many people. And
Mm.
so if you do want to escalate somebody up to those therapeutic doses, then consider, big pharma, consider a lower dose. People shouldn't have to lay on the couch for a month vomiting profusely to
Exactly.
onboard a medication or a peptide, right? But on the other side, I was talking about using very potentially, like for someone like yourself, who's metabolically very optimized, you lift weights, you do all the things, right? You get your sleep, you get your protein in, you do all the things. If you were coming to me saying, I've got this neurologic issue, or I've got um, any number of things, PCOS, fertility issues, we are allowed to use things off label. And so in those cases, my husband has high blood pressure and he's got cardiovascular disease in his family. So in those cases, we would use these peptides potentially preventatively or in very minuscule doses because you
Mhm.
would not tolerate usually anywhere near the standard starting dose. And anyway, all that to say, that week, everybody was getting letters and I got deplatformed. So I speculate. I do not know. I don't have any proof, but I
Yeah.
speculate I kind of got caught up in the crosshairs there, I think.
Yeah.
Because did have a girlfriend who has a decent size account who comes out and says very, like, she tells you how to dose, where to get it, not even prescription. Like, she's making claims that I think were way riskier than anything I would ever say publicly or even
Mhm.
on the internet for that matter. And she got suspended that week as well, her account. And when she was allowed to appeal, I was not. And when she appealed, she was allowed to find out who reported her, and it was Eli Lilly. And it was the day after my account went down.
I didn't know you could do that.
Well, they didn't give me any option. I was just gone.
Interesting. I got a guy next time if anything happens to
Okay.
you.
I literally asked everyone I knew. I'm like, somebody has to know someone at Meta. You know who I think knew someone at Meta? I think it might have been Jen Cohen. I don't know if you know Jen Cohen, but
Yeah.
she's a cool chick too. And
Yeah.
I owe her a lot, I think. Anyway, that was all crazy.
What's
It was
so
crazy.
so basically to understand, it's they don't want you recommending these
Mm.
non-prescription. It's like a white label versus their Eli Lilly label. And so they're basically saying you can't do this other thing over here that's not ours.
I don't think they want compounding pharmacies, and I never really was. It's like, however you can access it. In fact, there's a
Yeah.
paper that came out this
Because compounding pharmacies don't use Eli Lilly's formula,
Yes,
so they don't
correct.
have to pay them licensing.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
And so
correct.
because if I understand this correct, like what do they have that is patented in this? Like what are compounders not allowed to use or allowed to use?
I don't know all the details. I know that there's 503A and 503B in the compounding world, and I'm not a compounding pharmacist, so I'm not an expert in this, but there is a clause that came into being in the early 2000s or 2000s and teens. Yeah, it was like 2013, I think. It was when I was in practice, that compounding pharmacists could fill the need on a shortage.
Interesting.
And that's a 503B. And I don't know if those are more identical to the brand name or not, but these two peptides have been in shortage for a long time. And so 503B compounding pharmacies were filling that need. And now there's a big lawsuits going on because supposedly they're out of shortage and it's a whole thing. I don't pretend to follow it all completely, or understand it all. But now it's going to go back to 503A, which is less there's less oversight on 503A. So them pushing against this compounding it might be pushing it into even a less, you know, I don't want to say
Regulated?
less safe.
Yeah.
That's not the right word, but there's going to be even less oversight on how these are manufactured in different pharmacies than they were before. So
Wow.
I don't know. I'm trying to stay out of the whole mess. I was really excited this last month, or in March actually. An article came out in the Journal of Diabetes showing that you could actually take the pens, because this is the big thing. The brand names are in pens and they're pre-filled, they're pre-dosed.
Oh, so you can't change the dose.
Yes, that's the problem. I should have said that early on. The compounding come in vials and you can pull up what you want. So you can
Yeah.
have a more personalized approach. So the pens, though, this paper was published and they were talking about using it in smaller doses. They called, I mean, it's like microdosing has made it mainstream and I'm nowhere in the conversation, but that's okay. Because I'm not talking about it for weight loss. I'm trying to talk about it for other things. But they came out with this paper showing microdosing for type 2 diabetes. You can start people at a lower dose and you can actually use this pen click method with the brand name pens. So that should make Big Pharma happy because their product is still being used.
Yep.
But depending on how, and they have a whole chart in the study. Anyone can go look it up. I can give you the link to put in the show notes. There's a whole
Great.
chart on how to use the pen click method to get the appropriate dosage if somebody can't tolerate the dose or if somebody needs something more personalized.
Yeah, which is brilliant because I have some friends that, by all intents and practices, they probably did need help from some sort of GLP-1, I guess they're called.
Yeah.
And so, but they got so sick
Yeah.
from the first usage that yes, they started losing weight. But if we already think that GLP-1s might cause some lean muscle mass, and then they're so sick they can't function or weight lift or do anything else,
Yeah.
that's got to exacerbate it.
Yeah. It's
right?
not good.
Interesting. So are these things then something that you get stuck on for life? Like, does this become another type of just lifetime drug that's great for pharmaceuticals and not great for individuals?
That's a good question. And I think that people don't understand the functional medicine approach versus the allopathic approach. In
Mm.
allopathic medicine, you have a condition. The standard of care is to prescribe X, Y, or Z drugs for said condition. This is why doctors aren't MDs traditionally trained are not keen on running a bunch of functional lab tests because they're responsible legally for whatever comes up on that lab result. Okay, so they need to prescribe based on standard of care, whatever drug is appropriate that has been deemed the standard of care. You show up with high blood pressure, they must put you on a blood pressure medication.
Wow.
If they're going to go, it depends on what state they're in because some boards are a little, more rigorous than others. But like in Oregon, for instance, MDs don't do well prescribing desiccated thyroid, which is a prescription, but naturopathic doctors can. MDs don't prescribe ivermectin for COVID, but naturopathic doctors could because naturopathic doctors, we are not under standard of care. We're under best practices. There is a standard. We can't go rogue and do random shit, but we actually have to know more. We have to know what the standard of care is. We have to present it to the patient and then we have to present them all our alternatives, which are the other options that we would bring to the table. So anyway, all that to say, the way that I do things with peptides in general is I cycle them. We cycle them. We go on and off of them. We use them as a tool for a time. I
Yep.
do that with drugs too, though. Like Prozac, for instance, it was never studied long term for depression. It was studied to be implemented as a basically like an emergency shoot when you're
Oh.
going through a terrible time period. You use it during a window. Maybe you have a divorce or a death in the family and you're devastated. These are window, and I like to think of most drugs as like hormones we generally tend to need to stay on, but I cycle those too. So I think it depends on the individual. I think there are people living with I do believe there is a disease of obesity. I don't think every obese person has the disease, and I don't think everybody with the disease is obese.
Mhm.
But I do think there is the disease of obesity, and I do think that for some of those folks, yes. But I don't think that anybody even has the right to start a GLP-1 if they also aren't going to the gym and lifting weights. And they're not also hitting their macros, their protein macros. So my argument from day one has been, it's not the peptide's fault. It's a dosing and management issue.
Yeah.
Like, and I hate to diss on the doctors because we all went to medical school and racked up tremendous, huge bills, not because we were waiting to get rich. There are not rich doctors. Do you know any rich doctors?
No,
There
like
might be
compounding pharmacy owners, some of them.
yeah, but there's a few like plastic surgeons, et cetera, that are
Yeah, for
doing well,
sure.
but most people don't go into medicine to they're not greedy assholes. We don't
No.
give up a huge chunk of our life.
No, you can't get rich quick either at it.
Yes,
You could get rich
exactly.
very, very slowly
Slowly.
over decades.
Right. So anyway, all that to say, people seem to think that the greedy doctors, so I hate to throw them under the bus, but many of them are getting into areas that maybe aren't their strongest wheelhouse. And so they know nothing about how to manage or help somebody with metabolic dysfunction. And yet they're throwing peptides at them and they're doing what the studies tell them to escalate the dose quickly and aggressively. And so these people are getting put on these high doses very quickly, which I think at the end of the day is going to be catastrophic because the muscle loss, and I've said this in the past, I want to add something here. Yes, when you put anybody on a low calorie diet and you severely calorically restrict, or you do gastric bypass and you malnourish them, basically, they're going to have lean mass loss. And it's on par with the percentage. It's the same. I will say though, these peptides, these GLP-1s, they rev that AMPK pathway, which I said earlier is catabolic. So I think at the end of the day, these folks that are on high doses that are doing nothing else and are not doing any lifestyle changes are going to find themselves perpetually on them for the rest of their life. And if they ever go off of them, they are now like melted candles.
Oof.
They've got very severe wasting that has occurred throughout their lean tissue and including their muscle mass, which is your metabolic engine. And it's a disaster. And now they're sitting in a very brittle diabetic state versus, so they're masking and they're, dare I say, overdosing, but that might be the problem.
Interesting. Is
I
it
don't know if that answers the
it
question.
does and opens up so many more. Am I dumb for not knowing that standard of care meant that doctors really have to do it this way, or they basically open themselves up to risk is the way
Yes,
that I
that's
take that.
correct.
Is that like common knowledge?
No.
And so, because I often think with doctors, and to your point, I'm giving them a hard time. Like, I'm like, why don't you tell people to eat healthier? Like, why are you putting my dad on this blood pressure medicine nonstop for 40 years and he has a big tummy and not telling him, like, stop with, he loves Mexican food, like, stop with this, get to the gym, you need to be lifting more. Why does that never come up? But I think it makes a lot of sense if actually there's a perverse incentive for them and it's not even the doctor's fault. It's not that they wanna get a kickback from a drug company all the time.
There's no kick there, and that's the other thing. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I was in practice for 10 years in a big clinical setting, and nobody came knocking with a check when I wrote a prescription. There's no, there might be companies that are courting doctors, maybe sending them on trips, and they have
Yeah,
to disclose this too. You
yeah,
can legally look that up, but it's not
sure.
like you write a prescription and you get it's not,
Yeah,
that's not, and maybe there's some off record deals going on I don't know about, but no. And also they are time constrained. So if they're back in 1995 when I was working at a hospital in Portland, I was an undergrad, I wanted to be a doctor. And this is why I went ND instead of MD route, because this MD came in and he was a neurologist and we were in the Alzheimer's and dementia clinic doing
mhm.
research. And he said that at that time in 95, if he spent more than 7 minutes in a room with a patient, he was losing money. So they can't tell your dad how to eat right, and they're not lifting themselves, they're train wrecks.
Yeah,
Most doctors have fatty liver themselves, so they tell you, "Oh, your labs are normal, you have some fatty liver, that's okay." It's like, "No, it's not okay. Your liver is literally going to be cirrhotic in 10, 20 years." Like, this is maybe a little longer, depends on the person and how much alcohol they're drinking, but it's just bizarro land to me that we've got, mediocre health folks, but to their defense, their lives are incredibly stressful.
yep,
So there's a lot of going up against doctors, and we really do trash on them way too often, and I
yeah.
don't love it. Um, they're they're wheels in a car or whatever the term is.
Cogs in
They're
a wheel.
yeah, they're
Yep.
just in a system that is, I believe, quite corrupt and
Yeah.
misguided.
Well, it's interesting. It's close to my heart right now because my brother has just really been struggling with, he got his gallbladder out when he was like 13 or something. And he had like cyclical vomiting syndrome
Oh no.
and has had all of these health issues. But the answer from a lot of medical professionals has been, all right, let's put you on anti-anxiety medication. Let's put you on an antidepressant. Are you depressed? Let's do this. And I'm like, I just watched the kid drink a Arnold Palmer with half lemonade in it and eat a big thing of meatloaf. Like, could we stop? If he already can't process stuff, if his gut is messed up, if he's vomiting all the time, should we start with something else? And then, kind of telling him that didn't matter if he drank sometimes.
Yeah.
And at some point, I really feel for like the families and everybody involved because you get to a certain point too with him where I'm like, bud, you're a grown man. This is your path.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to figure it out. And I'm here to support you if and when you're ready to listen, but I can't fucking tell you the same thing anymore. And so I bet doctors often are like, listen, I've been telling you to also work out for 72
Yeah.
years. You haven't been. So here's the blood pressure medication so you don't actually die.
Yes.
But also, could you do the other things too?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of that going on, but
Yeah.
probably, not a lot of us always listen to the doctor.
And it takes time. Patients can get hostile and aggressive. And even people were coming to me as a naturopathic physician in a cash-based practice. I did not take insurance. So they knew exactly what they were getting into. Like
Yeah.
they sought me out specifically for that in a
Yeah.
town where all the NDs take insurance. And they still would fight me tooth and nail. And they
Interesting.
would get mad at me, hostile, angry if their labs showed up all of a sudden they're diabetic. And I'm like, dude, I've been telling you for 10 years what was coming. And then suddenly here it is. And like grown men getting up out of their chair yelling at me, terrifying
Wow.
me
Oh,
because they're so mad. Like it's crazy. Medicine's crazy. It's why I shut my practice down. Like I take clients and patients very rarely these days because it's just, you go in circles. It's online's one thing. I'm beating the drum constantly, repeating myself like a
yeah.
robot because I'm trying to get it to land and I'm trying to find new ways to say it so it'll land. And that's frustrating enough because then you're
Yeah.
just dealing with, ignorant trolls. But in clinical practice, when someone's paying you a clip of money,
Yeah.
you're not the cheapest doc in town and they're still yelling at you when you're telling them
Yeah.
to go to the gym. And, it's tough. It's a tough gig. But for your brother's sake, some digestive enzymes, some ox bile, and
That's what I told him.
some HCl would go a long way.
HCl. You know what? Gabrielle
Ox
Lyons said
bile.
ox bile too. And I
Yeah.
told him and he said it sounded gross. And so we're working with him on that. I'm like, it's a pill.
Does he
You don't
like
taste anything.
does he like carnivore stuff? Does he like that scene at all?
You know what? I think at this point,
'Cause there's
sadly, he's at that point where, when you just don't have any other options and your health has gotten to a level where it is the only thing that matters and you
yeah,
realize that everybody else can have 100 problems, but you only got one. That's where he's at.
yeah.
And so with him right now, it's really, all right, man, like this is your moment. And it's a bummer that I haven't known how to get through to him prior to this. But I think he is at that moment where he's willing to listen. And so, I'd be curious your take too. How, have you found like if somebody is at that point where they're like, God, I'm I'm here and it's hard and I know I have to make massive health changes, what would you tell them? How do you get somebody to even start truly prioritizing their health when they realize that they have no other choice but to?
It comes down to pain and vanity or
Mm.
vanity. So when people hit a wall on one of those, they usually will be, I mean, I've had to multiple times. I recently got back some very concerning labs. I knew I was burning the candle at all ends and I was like,
Mm,
I'm fine, I'll be
mm,
okay. And then I get my labs back and I'm like, oh, my thyroid's on fire. It's not okay, right? I've got to make some severe changes. I've got to
yeah.
restructure my business and restructure my life. It's one step at a time. I really do think the answer's in the gym, though. I think
Mhm.
the ritual of committing to that process of going 3 days a week. It doesn't have to be 5 days a week. It's just I lift 3 days a week. Going to the gym at a scheduled time or hiring that trainer if you can. I think that's great money invested if you can hire a personal trainer who knows
Mhm.
what they're doing and committing to that process because that process begets the other processes. So when you're training, you will automatically start to reprioritize what you put in your mouth because you
Mm,
work too hard in the gym to sacrifice and ruin the opportunity for that muscle protein synthesis. So you're like, I'm going to eat better. You hydrate more. You're tired, so you go to bed.
mhm,
You start to make these incremental changes around the one goal of building muscle. And so if
mm.
getting stronger is the goal physically, and maybe vanity is what's driving it, maybe pain's driving it, but either way, you're not going to get out of here alive or in very good shape if you don't have muscle. So if that becomes, I joke like the answer's in the gym and on your plate. Stage 1. Like, that's it. My mom to this day, every time she asks, "I have a friend who has this whatever condition." I'm like, "Mom, what has my answer been for 20 years? Eat more meat and lift weights." I'm like, "Yes, mom. Tell 85-year-old Peggy to eat more meat and lift weights. She will feel better."
Why do you think we don't listen to that?
It's
Like,
too easy. They want sexy. They want the GLP-1.
yeah.
I mean, I came out gunning on GLP-1s, and it wasn't that I was trying to promote GLP-1s. I was trying to promote metabolic health. And I was
Mhm.
like, "Hey guys, we have something that might help." Because even with my best intentions at 50 years old, my metabolic health was starting to become compromised because of chronic stress. There's not much I can do outside. I'm doing the gym, I'm doing the food, I'm doing all the things. And I was starting to have that 15, 20 pounds here. So
Yeah.
I found a peptide that can help, and it also helps with my autoimmune disease, and it also helps with my brain fog, and it helps with my mood. Anyway, all that to say, I was just putting lipstick on a pig. I was still trying to promote the message of metabolic health, which is all the things, which I know feels daunting for someone like your brother, but just even prioritizing what goes in his mouth,
Yeah.
because this is the direct route to the shoot.
Yeah.
Like it's like putting something inflammatory on an open wound. Like, why would you do that? You
Yeah.
wouldn't put acid or salt. I mean, maybe salt will dry it out, but you wouldn't put acid on your
Open
open
wound.
wound. And yet,
Mm-mm.
when we have gastrointestinal issues, we're continuing to crush Chick-fil-A and wonder what the heck's going wrong, right? Like
Yeah.
so that he has to hit a wall. It has to get really uncomfortable for him. And
Yeah.
then he'll just inherently know what to do because we have instincts and humans have instincts that tell them what's right and wrong. It's just a matter of like, the other night I was like, damn it, I can't eat corn. I know I can't eat corn. And those damn masa chips, have you tried
Oh, yeah, they're
those?
delicious.
They
They're filled
sent
with
me like
corn.
a whole package
Oh,
and I
no.
started crushing them and I'm getting puffy and bloated. And that's right when I ran my labs and all my inflammatory markers are elevated, like just
Interesting.
barely.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's the frickin' corn chips I've been feasting on. I can't. And my daughter's like, Mom, we can't eat corn. Corn makes me break out. It makes you crazy. And I was like, I
It
know,
makes you
but they were
crazy.
so yummy.
Well, I think that is the process. It's also, I mean, I always thought it was a little crazy in the beginning when some of the presidents would talk about how they just wear the same thing every day and they lay it out at the end of the day
Yeah.
and they would put it on in the morning because I think this thing of decision fatigue is
Yes.
so real. And so even a doctor who knows all the reasons why not to do something specifically for your body, at the end of the day, you're tired, you're hungry, you don't have any willpower left, and the decision fatigue kicks in. And I think, it's a good reminder in being human. Maybe my last question for you is I think there's probably a lot of people out there too who, like, you're listening right now and you recognize your family member sounds like my brother, or it sounds like, some of your patients. How do you support somebody when you don't want, how do you support somebody when you want them to be healthier than they are willing to want for themselves?
All you can do is model it.
Mm.
I really have firmly come to that conclusion because I have family members too. People don't believe me, but I have very close family members who you wouldn't believe the health issues they have that are so solvable with lifestyle and they just won't listen to me. They only come to me when there's an emergency.
Yeah.
And then I have to bail them out and then I'm pissed because I'm like, if you had been doing any of the things I had been telling you to do, we wouldn't be in this position right now.
Yeah.
So the best that I can do, I've realized, is just to model it
Yeah. It's
and to live it because the only way out is through. No one's coming to save you. The government's not gonna save you. Your mom's not gonna save you. Your sister's not gonna save you. Your doctor's not gonna save you. Truly, like, if you're not putting in the work, especially as we age, especially as that wiggle room becomes less and less and less, and the faults become glaring. Like, the diabetes isn't just mild blood sugar dysregulation anymore. It becomes full bore, and now you've got all this other shit to deal with. You can't pull people out of that.
yeah.
You couldn't even pull your husband out of that. I
Yeah.
mean, without threat of divorce sometimes people
Yeah.
are struggling. So model it, walk the talk, be the person, and hopefully they'll come around.
And do some fucking deadlifts.
It solves a lot of problems.
I know what I'm doing tonight. I don't know about anybody else, but I only deadlift from here on out, basically. I do love the feeling of a deadlift though. Even like, if I don't go that heavy and I
Oh,
do
yeah.
like handheld weights, little barbell
Oh,
deadlift,
yeah.
like I'm into it. So I agree. Okay, the last thing I wanted to leave with here is, you know, um our audience has a ton of like high performers in it. So like people who just want their life to be better. They want to hit their peak performance. They're listening and wondering like, what's that like little extra that I should do too? We've talked about a lot of chronic disease, but where would you leave people with if they're already like, I'm doing pretty good. Like I'm crushing it over here. What studies have you seen or what information would you give to somebody who is out there like, I just want to be even better than I am today?
The two biggest things because that's been predominantly my patient base. The two biggest things would be number one, keep an eye on your hormones and get them handled before you think you need to. And that is different for everyone. That might be in your 30s, that might be in your 40s, but find somebody who's hormone literate and get that handled before you think you need to, because when it creeps up onto you, it's pretty subtle until you fall off the cliff. And
Mm,
it could be something like COVID or a big stressor or something that throws you off the cliff. And so
mhm.
having that dialed in, I think, is the ticket. I've been on hormones since my 30s. And when people say, you look great, I'm like, I shouldn't look great. I mean, I shared with you how unhealthy I was when I was a teen, but I think the hormones since the 30s have been, little bits here and there. I love the peptides for that as well. So
Yeah.
become peptide literate.
Yeah.
Educate yourself as best you can, because you're only going to get so far with any practitioner. So you need to have a basic handle on nutrition and fitness. Like that's a skill you need to learn, is how to
Mhm.
navigate the gym. And then I think the last thing is really watching your stress, because stress will erode all your best efforts despite how much intention you're putting into all of the good things. Stress will destroy your metabolism. It will destroy your beauty. I don't drink. I drink very rarely now. And somebody asked me the other day, she said, "Why'd you quit drinking?" I'm like, "'Cause it makes me ugly." So vanity has been vanity and pain. I live with a lot of chronic pain too. So I think it's just navigating your life, because what I see happen is these folks get to their mid to late 40s and then all of a sudden the wheels start falling off the car. And if they don't go into that with muscle and they don't go into that with some semblance of decent eating habits, it can happen very quickly. And so that's that miracle spot of like 45 to 50. Do not fuck around. Start getting serious about, we got to let some things go. We got to reprioritize. But if you want good, I think, good erectile function is key. Good libido, good sleep habits. Those are markers for good health. If your sleep starts falling apart as a woman, if your libido completely bottoms out, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Go get yourself handled.
Where are all the best places to follow Dr. Tina?
So I have a podcast. I would love for you to come on.
Love it.
Actually.
Love to.
Yeah, I have a great podcast I love doing. I'm on Instagram.
What is the podcast called?
It's called The Dr. Tina Show. Very original. DRTYNA. If you go to my website, drtina.com, I've got a free 4-part video series all about GLP-1s done right, where I dive deep into each video and I give you the science on a whole different story you probably haven't heard, which I think everybody should listen to, because you will end up with someone you love on these peptides. So you might as well become literate on it. I have a bigger course if people are interested, especially healthcare practitioners. And then I think I'm mostly on Instagram.
Yeah, I like your Instagram videos. I was just going through them yesterday.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? It's perfectly tailored, bite-sized pieces of information, exactly what you need, nothing that you don't. And for somebody like myself in health, that's what I can handle. That's my microdosing of, information for help. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So fun.
So now you can read your letter to your young self.
It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Okay. Dear Tina, I'm going to cry. Does everyone cry when they do this?
I cried when I did it.
Don't stress so much. Don't starve yourself so much of like everything. Do find the gym and learn to use it as therapy. Do seek joy as often as possible. Life is short. YOLO. Love, Tina.
Oh, I love it. I like her too. Thank you so much. We're going to do something cool with this for you too.
Okay. Now you made me cry.
No, well, thank you for sharing. Again, it's a reminder, like, man, we got to have so much love for those younger versions of us, and we don't do it enough.
Well, I just turned 51 and I was like, I have been grinding for so long. I have not had nearly the amount of fun that I should have had. Like I don't have as many years in front of me as I have behind me, maybe. And I need to have some fun. Like there was just stress and work and grind and stress and work. And I was like, that's not going to get me anywhere.
No,
it's done. Like I have to actually learn to shut off and enjoy what I built.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like that's the next evolution.
Yeah.
So next time you come back on the podcast, I'm going to have to bother you about what fun you've had. And
hold me
tell
accountable.
Your husband, I'm going to hold him accountable too.
Yes.
Dr. Tina, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
If you liked this podcast today, do me a favor, like and subscribe. It turns out that even though some of you come back and listen every single week, more than 60% of you aren't subscribed, which means that we don't get to be best buds on the internet, learning more from one another about the things that you care about every single day. So I would love for you to be along on our ride, like and subscribe for the channel. That is how we continue to get bigger and better guests for you. Also, leave me a comment about who you want to have on here next. I read every single one of them. Until next week, guys.
Generally, people who feel like they give a about way too many things, it's not an issue about the caring, it's the extent of how much they care. It's not about not giving what other people think. It's about finding something that is more important than what other people think. If you don't have anything more important going on in your life, then what other people think about you is going to dictate everything else.
Mark Manson, the best-selling author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a is here today to break down how to stop faking confidence and start earning it. You'll learn the psychology behind real self-belief, why trying to feel good all the time is actually what's holding you back. If you've ever second-guessed yourself or talked yourself out of taking a shot, this episode is your playbook for unstoppable confidence built from action, not affirmation.
The more you try to feel confident all the time, the more aware you become of all of the different areas that you're actually not confident. It's when you stop trying to be confident all the time that you actually feel comfortable in your pursuits, knowing that it might not work out, which is confidence.
If confidence is really just the comfort with failure, then how do you get more comfortable with failure?
I will say this, I would say probably.
I hate this answer. If you want to change your life right now, these are the habits that you need to start adopting. What are they?
I think it's...
I want to start with some of my favorite tweets of yours.
Okay.
I just went down a deep rabbit hole on...
Sure.
I haven't been in your tweets in a minute. I guess it's
Come on,
called
Cody.
X's. X's. I don't
Come
even know
on.
what we're doing. I know. And so there were a bunch. You had one that you pinned that's like a new favorite of mine, which is you said, paradoxically, the less you try to convince people to like you, the more likable you become. Is that true? And why?
I think when people try to make you like them, when they try to control your reaction to them, it is like inherently off-putting. I think we generally respect people who respect our agency, right? So if I come in here and I just start saying all the things you want to hear and trying to impress you and like be like all what I think you want to see, it actually puts a lot of pressure on you to make me feel happy and okay. And paradoxically, that makes you feel bad. So,
and do we not even realize that? Like, do you think people don't even realize the things they're doing to turn off other people?
I think so. If you think about it, it's like a very childish kind of tactic. Like I think when we're young, it's intuitive. It just feels intuitive of like, oh, I want people to like me. So let me just like agree with what everybody says. At some point that stops working and you kind of realize you're like, oh, I'd rather be disliked for who I am than liked for something I'm not. Right? Because you start feeling like even if you do get somebody to like you, it feels icky and it doesn't feel like you're being appreciated for who you authentically are. So, and I think this takes place in a lot of, I mean, obviously this is like a social phenomenon, but people do this in dating. You know, people do it with coworkers. They do it in business. It's like, you know, all the ass kissing, the yes men, like it backfires eventually.
You know, it's interesting because we've had many a walk on Venice Beach Boulevard or whatever that is, the boardwalk.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons, you know, I like talking to you so much is you have this weird experience, which is that you've been on the internet for how many years now?
I published my first blog post in 2007.
In 2007.
Yeah.
And you've obsessed kind of this entire time in varying ways, it seems to me at least, about human psychology and once through the lens of like men and dating. And you saw one whole era, which was like the, how do I get girls to like me era, right? And then you went through an era of like, I don't care if anybody fucking likes me, fuck all of you guys. And also how do I become confident with that and whatever. And so I've really appreciated your advice. So I'm excited that you're here because, man, we've both met a lot of people on the internet.
Yeah.
Some of the advice is like, sounds really good, that it's terrible advice.
Oh yeah.
And you have like a very strong moral compass.
Yes.
You know, an ethical and moral lens, which you're like, no, I will not give that advice anymore because it's not real.
Yeah.
Or, oh, hey, I did mess up on that. Sorry about that, which is also really rare on the internet. So I want to go through like a bunch of questions that I think about and then a bunch of questions from people who are listening. And I want you to take it through like a couple different eras.
Okay.
Like even the era of like, you know, now we're almost back again to how do I get women to like me? Because
it's been weird, honestly. Right? Like it's funny because I self-published a men's dating book back in 2011. And I just thought that era of my life was closed. And it's funny because like Gen Z men are showing back up and that book's starting to sell really well again.
No way.
So it's
Wait,
like,
what was that one called?
It's called Models Attract Women Through Honesty. And I wrote it, I really wrote it to kind of be the antidote to all the pickup artist stuff back in the day. You know, like, dude, you don't need to wear a fuzzy hat and like do magic tricks in a bar. Like you can just be a good human being. Yeah. And it's interesting because it's kind of catching a second life with the next generation.
Yeah, because they're having less sex.
It's
less
a mess.
relation. Yeah, it's a
Dating's
mess.
a mess right now. Yeah.
What is out there in dating right now? What are you hearing from your millions of followers on all different platforms?
From what I can tell, so I have a couple theories, but like I would say the primary one is I personally think that the apps are negative ROI for people's dating outcomes. Well, and it's primarily because they're optimizing for the wrong things. If you think about it, like I don't know how long you've been with your husband, but like if you think back to when you were single, you probably had the experience of you would often meet somebody and it wouldn't immediately occur to you, like you wouldn't immediately be attracted to them. Like maybe you would talk to them for a little bit, get to know them, and then they kind of like, they'd win you over. Like you'd have to like kind of warm up to them a little bit. And the reason that happens is just that like we're poor judges of who's going to make us happy in a relationship. Like we often don't understand the traits in a person that is compatible with us. And so when you get on an app, the app asks you for all these superficial traits that you want. It's like, oh, I want somebody who's, 6'5" in finance and like all this stuff. And it's like, it's all the resume shit that doesn't actually generate any sort of chemistry or connection with somebody. Whereas all the things that actually do matter, the personality traits and the background and the personal values and how the person experiences intimacy, the sense of humor, like all those things, they're hidden. So you can't match for those things. You have to meet the person first to understand if you actually have those things, if you're compatible with the person in that way. So I just think the dating apps have sorted for the wrong thing. And it's a classic case of people also not, because people don't know what they want, the dating apps are supplying a demand that is actually not solving the people's problems.
Oh, man. So, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, everything you're talking about is about this. Like people want to find love because they're chasing happiness. People want to find relationships because they don't want to be alone. Like it's all sort of about what do we want as a human? It's like part of this human experience. And I'm wondering like, I don't know. I think I read somewhere that you had written between books and blog posts. It was something wild. You're like 17,542 blog posts. I don't remember the number, but it's a lot. And one of the lines you said is that real success isn't actually about making money or being happy. What do you mean by that?
Both money and happiness they're like oxygen. When you don't have any, they solve everything. But when you have some, it solves nothing, right? So yeah, if you're broke, go get some money. Like that's definitely going to solve your problems. And if you're really miserable or depressed, then like, yeah, obviously get some happiness. But if you're already kind of at a steady baseline, like you're in a stable position, chasing more, it's inefficient in a lot of ways. Like it's not actually going to satisfy you in any meaningful way. I personally think that like on the long term, like if you look at if you zoom out and look at your entire lifespan from beginning to end, the best way to define success is simply to feel as though you spent your time well. It's the old deathbed question, right? It's like when you're 80 and laying on your deathbed, are you going to look back and say like, I'm glad I did that? Or are you going to say like, wow, I wish I didn't do so much of that? And to me, that boils down to meaning and purpose. Right? If you have meaning and purpose, if you are finding something meaningful and purposeful in your life to pursue and to chase after, whether that's building something or, starting a family or giving yourself to a cause, generally speaking, like that's the sort of stuff that decades later we look back on and we're like, I'm really glad I spent time doing that.
And do you think this is like a global phenomenon? Like you went to and spent time in the happiest country in the world, right? What did you find? Like, what do the happiest people in the world have? Or was it something totally else you found there?
Well, the funny thing, so the happiest technically the happiest country in the world is Finland. And if you talk to the Finnish, they're like, what? Really? And the conclusion I came to is that I think Finnish culture has they have this ethos of kind of low expectations, which is very opposite of how Americans are. But there's this sense of just being satisfied very easily. Like it's kind of a good thing to be satisfied. And I think that there's some wisdom in that, right? Like this isn't to say that you shouldn't chase things or you shouldn't have goals or dreams or whatever, but it's also like have those goals and dreams, but also while understanding that they're not going to solve anything. Like it's a fun game you're playing. Chase after that 10-year goal. Hopefully you achieve it. That's great. But just understand that like once you get on the other side of achieving it, you're still going to be the same stressed, anxious person who has problems and gets in fights with his mother. And it's all you're going to be the same person with the same shit going on. So you need to like ultimately find something that's worth the struggle. That feels like it makes the struggle worth it.
When you're talking to like, I think predominantly a lot of young men on the internet. And I love your YouTube videos, by the way.
Thank
but
you.
yeah, but you have quite a few where you talk about the habits that lead to like successful or happy lives. I know there's no hacks to any of this. And at the end of our 3-step process,
Sure.
their life will probably be totally fixed.
Yeah.
But if you had to give somebody, man, if you want to change your life right now, if you want to be more successful in life, these are the habits that you need to start adopting. What are they?
If I had a 16-year-old in front of me and my job was to optimize them to have the most healthy and successful life possible, I would actually start with social skills. Because it's on the psychological side, like pretty much all of the research around happiness essentially boils down to the quality of your relationships. Do you have people in your life, A, and then do you have trusting, intimate relationships with those people? Like, do you have people in your life that you feel like have your back, that you can trust, that you can go to with a problem, who aren't going to judge you for making a mistake? And on the psychological side, that's like the 80-20. And then on the professional side, as you know, like relationships are also everything. Like it's nobody ever did anything great by themselves. Like there's no incredible successful business story that they did it alone. It's like you either built an amazing team or you had an amazing team of people backing you and helping you and supporting you.
Yeah, I was reading a study the other day about how there's something like a 20 to 30% increase in salary just from thinking about increasing your EQ and really ignoring IQ, that IQ almost has no correlation between monetary success.
Yeah.
Do you find also in personal relationships, like I think a lot of people these days, some of our top videos on YouTube lately, I was talking to the team about them. They're all about confidence. And I thought that was really interesting because I feel like confidence usually goes away when you or a lack of confidence goes away when you work a lot.
Yeah.
Like the more you work, the more confidence I have. I rarely am like, we're not going to be able to do it. I'm like, we probably haven't prepped. We haven't done sufficient things in order to have this outcome.
Right.
And so I'm not confident we're going to hit it.
Yeah.
But it does seem like we have like a confidence crisis.
Yeah.
Do you see that with a lot of people saying, I do not feel confident in myself. I'm not going to be able to do it. I don't believe in myself. I have imposter syndrome.
Yeah. I feel like people definitely feel more scrutinized and judged these days. And I think a lot of that is just how online and permanent everything is. You know, I think when you and I were young, if you kind of made a fool out of yourself, people would forget about it within a week or two. Now it lives forever on the internet and people can it's just everybody has a phone in their pocket. So it's anything dumb you do or say can potentially last forever. So I just think people have become much more risk averse and they haven't built that muscle of taking risk. But the other thing too is I think, I've always said that confidence isn't about believing you're going to achieve success. It's a comfort with failure. It's knowing that you're going to be okay if it doesn't turn out okay. Like that's actually what makes you confident in a situation. It's like, I'm going to take a stab at this. And if it doesn't go all right, that's fine. I'm going to learn from it. Right. And I just think a lot of people have that backwards. So they focus on like the guaranteeing of success. And so they become a perfectionist and they try to control everything, which then just makes them more anxious and more stressed out. And they get into kind of a downward spiral.
That's a good point. I was really struggling to like nail what confidence is exactly the other day. We were literally just talking about it and whether that's inherent or not. But if confidence is really just the comfort with failure, then how do you get more comfortable with failure? Again,
by failing.
I hate this answer. I hate this for me. I hate this for everybody listening. Is this the
sorry, everybody.
Is there not a 3-step framework? God damn it, Mark.
Sorry, but
really, like, okay, so let's get granular then. Like, big failures, little failures, any failures, daily failures.
All the above. And I will say this, I would say probably little failures first. I think it's because big failures, if you're not used to failing and if you're not used to failing publicly, like it can overwhelm you and kind of wipe you out. But yeah, definitely you want to get lots of little failures in, lots of little embarrassments, lots of, coming back to the dating coaching thing, one of the first things I used to tell people is I would say like, how much have you gotten rejected lately? And most people would say not at all because they didn't ask anybody out. And I'm like, well, that's your first problem. Like, go get rejected 5 times and then we can talk about what went wrong, And people just don't think about it in those terms. They just think about it in terms of, give me the thing to say that is going to guarantee that this person likes me. And the world doesn't work that way.
Dude, it really doesn't. And it's almost like that in everything.
It is.
Like, it's every answer is actually just, do you want to go get somebody to date you that you like? Go eat shit at least 100 times to find one.
Yeah.
And it's like, and if you want to get rich, go talk to 100 customers that tell you no to get one. And if you want to buy a business, go look at 100 deals to find one. Like, every answer is basically quantity and more.
Yeah.
And if you don't pile on more pain and failure, you're never going to have the thing that you want.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And what's kind of interesting about you too, like, you've done these experiments with people. So as opposed to a lot of people who talk about things online, you're like, all right, I have a theory.
Yeah.
And we're going to go test this theory live and see if the theory actually works and whether it breaks down. And you've done it, as far as I can see, with people who have lost weight, one way or another, people who were scared of failure.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you could talk about one of the times that you walked in a chicken costume down Venice Boulevard, which I remember, and why? Because you put yourself through the experiment first, right?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I've always believed very strongly, like I've never wanted to be the guy on stage, like telling, this is what you should do. These are the 5 things that are going to change your life. I've always liked the idea of like, I'm in the trend, I'm in the shit and the muck with everybody else. I go through this stuff too. So in the videos, I do the same. I basically took fans with various anxieties or personal issues and kind of ran them through a gauntlet of different challenges or having them face their fears and whatnot. But I made myself do it too. And it was a good exercise, right? It's like, one is just, I should be able to walk the walk of what I say. But it's also, I think it comes back to like building that, you can call it scar tissue or you can call it the muscle, but it's basically, it's like that accumulation of failures, embarrassments, etc. And it's funny because doing that series of videos, by the time we got towards the end, like I honestly reached a point where I'm like, I don't think there's anything at this point that could embarrass me or scare me.
Careful if you put it out there,
I know. It was funny actually. So we just shot one a few weeks ago. And it was funny. I basically hosted a dinner for a bunch of people in my audience and worked on a bunch of stuff with them and then took them outside and we were on the beach in Malibu and took them outside and then had everybody walk on hot coals and which is like a classic Tony Robbins thing. And it was really funny because the attendees like looked at me and they're like, oh, well, you do this all the time, right? And I'm like, no, I've never done this before.
You're like, it might work, you might die.
Yeah, and they were all looking at me, they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll find out.
You okay?
Yeah, it was fun.
But I like that. I was supposed to go to Tony's show the other week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I've never done it. It actually, that gives me anxiety. We've
the
got
fire stuff or being at a
like
Tony Robbins
hugging
seminar.
random people, jumping up and down, smiling.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm an opt out, and I say that with a lot of love to Tony, who's going to come on the pod, and he was like, "Come," and you know what his selling point was? Be in the front row. I was like, Tony, not a selling point.
No.
I want to be in the back. I'm unsure about this, But I couldn't end up doing it because I had some health stuff. But I do think that it would have probably been good for me. Because I hate that. I hate the idea of hugging strangers and jumping up and down. And
maybe, it's funny, like a huge part of those seminars is that kind of like synthetic fun. And it's easy. I think it's one of those things where it's like easy for you and me, because I have the same feeling. Like I look at it and I'm like, really? Like, we're going to dance again? Like, what? Come on, man.
No public dancing.
Yeah. It's like, no, I don't want to give another back rub. Like, it's just.
Oh, God, you have to do back rubs?
Yeah. I'm like, I'm good, man. Like, I don't, but it's funny because I think it's ultimately we're not the target market. Like it's, if you think about somebody who's extremely depressed, extremely lonely, like hasn't gotten out much, has kind of lost touch with most of the people in their lives, an experience like that can be very powerful. But yeah, if you do have like a bunch of good relationships in your life, you're pretty happy. Like it is kind of just it's synthetic fun.
Interesting. So you almost have had to stair step your way up the embarrassment ladder too.
Oh yeah.
You're like, you know, now chicken costume is like, that's a Tuesday.
Oh yeah. I could put one on right now. It's like no problem. But it's like anything though, right? Like, I mean, you climb that ladder with money too, right? Like it's like the first time you have a 5-figure deal, you're sweating bullets. You know, now it's like you probably don't even get out of bed for a 5-figure deal. So it's like anything in life is like that. You get that progressive desensitization that happens over time.
Yeah, that's probably actually bad in a lot of ways, and why really rich people go crazy.
It can be.
You know, they like can't find the new adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you have a line actually that I like, which is like, happiness comes from progress, therefore happiness requires struggle, which I think lends itself to this.
Yes.
Because what if you can't find something to struggle on anymore? What does that quote mean to you?
Well, it's paradoxical because the more successful you become, the harder it is to know what progress is or what progress is worth having. So, and this is why you see, so in my second book, I talk about this, that there's I believe it's called the Easterland paradox in psychology, which is essentially that you find that the poorer the country or the poorer the neighborhood, the lower the suicide rate. And the more affluent the country and the more affluent the neighborhood, the higher the suicide rate. And I think it comes from the fact that when you don't have anything in life, like when you're struggling on a day-to-day basis, meaning is very simple. It's like, get to tomorrow, get the rent paid, get some food on the table. Like there's no ambiguity of what you should be doing to be improving your life. If you're like kicking it in a Bel Air mansion, you know, with like some crazy 9-figure exit or something, and you're 32 and you have nothing to do all day, like that is an existential crisis. Like nobody's going to shed a tear for you, but it's not obvious what progress is. It's not obvious what you should do next. In fact, the fact that you can do potentially an infinite number of things actually makes it even harder to figure out what progress looks like or what you should be doing next. And so you often see, so it's funny, like I don't know if it's a national network or if it's just like a California thing, but there's a network, it's called the Post-Exit Founders Group or network or whatever. And it's, and I've got some friends who are in it, and I've talked to them before and they're like, yeah, dude, it's like when we do our events and everybody gets behind closed doors, it's like half the people there are like in an existential crisis because they just had this massive check hit their bank account and they're not working anymore. And sure, you can like splurge on a boat and go to Greece or something, but like that gets old after a month or two. And then you're just sitting around being like, oh shit.
Yeah.
What next?
Especially if like entrepreneurship is a trauma response, which I think it is half the time. I'm like, what sane person would do this? That's not normal. And so if that's true, and so like half the reason you keep going is because you're kind of self-masochistic and you like the, you know, struggle and figuring out what to do next. Yeah. If I only had the option of sipping Mai Tais all day and you got to look at yourself in the eye and nobody else, ooh, that could become problematic.
For sure. You know? It's funny, like one of the most depressed I've ever been is after my first book blew up. And it was because basically everything I had been working towards the previous 10 years all happened and got accomplished at the same time. And so then I just kind of sat around being like, well, I guess I'll play some more video games because I don't know what else to do. And it was like a very bleak 6 months. It was very strange. Which is weird because everybody's patting you on the back and saying, oh my God, you must be living your dream. And you're like, yeah, this is my dream. But I'm the same dude with the same problems and the same anxieties and the same bad habits. And except now I have nothing to look forward to. I have like no definition of progress in my life.
Buying a business or launching your own venture can feel impossible if you're stuck figuring out the website, logo, email marketing all at once. But here's the good news. GoDaddy Aero is here to help. So just a few prompts, it builds a professional website, a logo, an email, even social content, all tailored to your business. It's like having a whole launch team in your laptop. Instead of months of grinding, you can go from idea to launch-ready business in minutes. No more waiting, no more guessing, just a real online presence that you can grow with day one. Suddenly, the thing that was just a tiny idea and a notebook is online, polished, and ready to scale. So if you're ready to take your idea to life, head to GoDaddy.com/Codie Sanchez and try GoDaddy Aero today.
That book was so big, The Subtle Art of
Yeah.
Not Giving a Fuck. Obviously, we talked about it in the beginning of this, in the intro, but it was so big. It is so big.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most sold nonfiction copies or
like
books of all time,
20-something million copies at this point.
which is insane.
Yeah.
Also an incredible documentary on Netflix. I remember when that came out.
Yeah, thank
Great thumbnail, too. Was that you? Weren't you at a floaty at a pool? With
Yeah, they put me in a pool. There's this like crazy surreal opening sequence that involves me sitting in a pool drinking out of a pineapple while like people die and emergencies happen around me. It's like this very dramatic sequence. It was like 45 degrees in New Zealand when they shot that. So I was freezing my ass off the entire time. But I got to have my little Hollywood moment.
It did not look like that. It looked lovely and happy.
So cold. There was like there were a bunch of PAs with like mountains of towels on the side. So as soon as I got out of the pool, they just like draped all these towels over me. So I was so cold.
But what's cool about that book that I think is really resurfacing for people, boundaries are really big with the kids these days, not giving a fuck, having confidence. That book, again, is like, I feel like even having another resurgence moment. I'm sure there are many people out there right now thinking about what other people think more than those other people are ever actually thinking about them.
Oh, like all of us.
Right. Like you're talking about me. So the question is,
it's called being human.
The book's not that long, which I also love about it. But if you had to distill for somebody who hasn't read it yet, what do you do when you give too many fucks?
So the paradoxical thing, and this is laid out in chapter 1, is the whole idea of not giving a fuck. It's a bit of a misnomer. Like this idea that things are just going to roll off your back and nothing's going to faze you. There's a word for that in psychology. It's called a psychopath. So we don't want that. You do want to care about things. Obviously, you do want people in your life that you do care about their opinion, right? Like it should upset me if, I don't know, my parents are mad at me. So the question is, how much should we care? So generally people who feel like they give a fuck about way too many things or what way too many people think, it's not an issue about the caring, it's the extent of how much they care. So the point I make in the book is that it's not about not giving a fuck what other people think. It's about finding something that is more important than what other people think. Because if you don't have anything more important going on in your life than what other people think about you, then what other people think about you is going to dictate everything else. And that's just like a shitty place to be. It's nothing good's going to happen. But if you have, this comes back to the meaning and purpose thing. If you have something very meaningful, something you're giving yourself to, something you're willing to sacrifice for, something you care very, very deeply about, then suddenly it's okay if some people don't like you. It's okay if some people don't get it, if some people judge you or disapprove of you.
So what would you say to somebody that's like, I just want to stop being such a people pleaser?
Find the hills that you're willing to die on. Ask yourself, what are you willing to be disliked for? And for a people pleaser, that's going to be a very hard question to answer. They might not actually have anything that they can answer, and which at that point, your job becomes to find something. Find something you're willing to be disliked for, and then go do it. Because that's your thing. That's the piece of meaning and purpose that's going to be more important than other people's opinions. And as long as you're driving towards that, then everything else will kind of fall into place.
What is sort of the right way to respond when somebody else is like coming at you in a boundary way, or when somebody else is trying to make you work outside of something that you feel comfortable with? How do you keep boundaries, but not look like a dick?
I think tactically speaking, it's always great to frame things like rules. So, for instance, if I was like, let's say your producer emailed me and was like, come in at whatever o'clock. And I was like, no, that's preposterous. I refuse. Then it creates this ugly situation, right? Whereas if I'm just like, hey man, I have this rule. I don't do interviews after 3 p.m. Sorry, maybe we can find another time. Like when you frame things as a rule, It's like, hey, this is just a rule I have in my life. I just don't do this thing. And it's just to take care of my own health and my own sanity or whatever. People respect it. And then if they don't, it makes it very easy to be like, oh, well, then fuck them. Like, they're not respecting my rules, so this is just not going to work out. So I always encourage people, like, frame whatever boundaries you want to have, frame it as a rule. It's like, hey, I don't, I don't talk about this subject with people who aren't part of my family. Nothing personal, And then it's like, then things become very clear.
It's so good because it's shifting the no to you to like, oh no, it's not about you. It's about this thing other here that already exists. It's like you get to use a shadow influence without even having one.
Yeah.
And then you get to deflect in a respectful way whatever somebody else is trying to push on you. That's so good.
Yeah. And what's interesting too is that it also clarifies for you the caliber of the relationship you have, right? Like, if the person doesn't respect your rule, then by extension, they're not respecting you. So it makes it very clear of like, okay, I have somebody in my life who doesn't respect me. What am I going to do about that? Whereas if you're kind of in this people pleasing mode and you're like, well, I don't want to upset them, so I'm going to like hint and like maybe like be a little passive aggressive, drag my feet, pretend like I forgot, then you just end up in this like murky gray area where it's like nobody's really happy with how the friendship's going or the relationship's going, but like you're kind of going through the motions, and like it doesn't end well.
Do you think that we are like over labeling ourselves, such as like these days I was like watching something online. It's like, I'm an avoidant. I'm a this. I'm a, I'm with a passive aggressive person. He's definitely a narcissist. Like, what is going on with all these labels we're placing on ourselves? Are these real? Are they that black or white?
Yeah, they are real. They're not necessarily black and white. And I have mixed feelings about it. Like, I think it's a sword that cuts both ways. So I do think there is a bit of an over labeling that has been happening. So I'll make the bull case first for all this labeling. And I guess we could call this just kind of like therapy culture in general, so it's all of the language that permeates TikTok and Instagram and YouTube these days, and people talking, about being neurodivergent and avoidant and attachment types and dealing with narcissists and all this stuff. Like, there's all this like kind of clinical therapy language that has entered into the mainstream. So on the one hand, it represents just an awareness of like a lot of these dynamics and issues, right? Which I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, if you go back a couple generations, like, people just buried shit for decades, and it only come
like
out
adults,
after
shove it down.
Just keep shoving it down, and
don't deal with that,
and hope it doesn't come out after 9 or 10 drinks. So I do think it's good that these things are being talked about. The problem is that there's a very fine line between labeling a problem and adopting a label as an identity. So as soon as you adopt a label as an identity, like the way our minds work is whatever I've defined myself as part of my identity, I'm going to defend it, and I'm going to become emotionally attached to it. So if I decide that, let's say I'm ADHD, which I am diagnosed as ADHD, but if I decide to make that a core part of my identity, like it defines who I am and my relationships and how I like see the world and interact with the world, then I'm going to start imposing that on all of my experiences and my relationships. And then you get this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, which is that because I'm approaching every experience in my life as like, well, as an ADHD person, I can't really handle this. And as an ADHD person, you need to talk to me this way and not that way. You actually amplify how serious the condition is. Whereas if you just said like, okay, this is a thing I have and I'm just going to manage it and I'm not going to make it part of my identity, you can use that awareness to diminish how much it affects your life. So the problem I see is that adopting these labels as an identity is being rewarded online, and so it's the more it's rewarded, the more people like cling to them, which the worse they feel for having them.
great point. I've also been diagnosed as ADHD from an online test I did once. And
Very clinical.
Yes, it was super. But the best part about the test was at the end. I didn't believe it when somebody sent it to me. But the end, there was a literal link to talk to I guess it would have been a psychiatrist because they could prescribe and consider some sort of option, which I believe was some variant of Adderall that I hadn't heard of before. So like, you may need to get on a person with this one and some of your treatment options. So it's like kind of an ad.
Yeah.
And I thought, for the love of all that's holy, in a 15 question interview online, you're going to diagnose me as X thing and give me a pill. Seems flawed.
Yes.
You know?
There's a whole overdiagnosis issue. I mean, and that's just across the board. Anxiety disorders, depression, PTSD, like there's probably all of those are being overdiagnosed to a certain extent. I mean, the problem is just, without getting down too much of a tangent, there's always been kind of the pharmaceutical incentive, right, to diagnose people. And I think for many, many decades, the population was underdiagnosed. So like that incentive was aligned with the public good. But I think probably in the last 10 years, 15 years, we're getting to a place where there's an overdiagnosis, and now that incentive is an issue. And then on top of that, you have kind of the social incentives of, well, if I start making TikToks talking about my ADHD, then I'm going to get a following, and all these other ADHD people are going to follow me. Or if I talk about my anxiety disorder or my panic attacks, like all these other people are going to follow me. And then that becomes just a core part of who I am, which psychologically subtly promotes a greater propensity for anxiety attacks and panic attacks, right? So like self-definition, I probably should have said this earlier, like self-definition has a huge impact on our mental well-being, right? Like there's so much research about this on both good and bad labels. So like, for instance, if you set out and start a new challenge, say it's a business challenge, or it could be anything, it could be running a mile or whatever, simply believing that you are capable of doing it, that you will be successful at it, like increases your odds of success substantially. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy aspect of life, right? Like if I tell myself that my new business venture is going to fail, it makes it more likely it's going to fail, because it's going to prime my brain to start looking for all the ways it could screw up. And then when it does screw up, I'm going to be like, see, I always knew it was going to screw up. So it's like, this is why you often see like founders and entrepreneurs are delusionally optimistic and overestimate themselves consistently, because it's actually very useful in a certain context. You see this with the athletes. You generally see this with like a wide range of highly successful people. The opposite of that is true as well. So if you believe, I can't do this because I'm an anxious person, I can't do this because it's going to be too stressful, I'm going to have panic attacks, you make it more likely that you're going to succumb to stress and panic attacks. That's not to say that it's the only thing causing your stress and panic. Like people do legitimately have anxiety disorders and panic disorders and all sorts of things. But the language you use with yourself can move the needle in terms of the likelihood of it holding you back or not. And so the other concerning part of therapy culture is that I think it is subtly reinforcing people to place limitations on themselves, to say, instead of saying I have ADHD, and well, actually there's a bunch of contexts and situations that ADHD can actually be an asset. It's encouraging people to say, I have ADHD, so I'm just never going to be like a normal person. And there's all these things I can't do. And there's a bunch of things I'm probably going to fail at. And then it becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy.
If you're listening, like how do you integrate this into your life? Like what should you do instead of labeling yourself as negative things? How do you change and prime your brain so that you can label yourself a winner?
It's a great question. I also think there's potentially issues with labeling yourself a winner. So I'm of the Buddhist school of like, don't label yourself anything. You don't know who the fuck you are. because when you don't have a label, then your potential is infinite, right? Like you could potentially become anything or anybody you want. So I recommend people shy away from labels as much as possible. And if you do adopt one, like be very conscious of why you're adopting it and like what the consequences of adopting that label are. I'll use kind of a superficial example, or it's not really superficial. It might sound superficial, but it was actually very profound for me. So I started, as we talked about earlier, I started blogging 2007. My first business was dating and relationship coaching. And that actually did pretty well. And I was like happy and like everything was going great. And I decided to write a book to kind of promote my online coaching business. That book eventually became Subtle Art. Subtle Art went on and sold a bazillion copies. And sure enough, next thing I know, all these big book deals are showing up. All these publishers want to work with me. All these like incredible opportunities are knocking on my door. I got to do a book with Will Smith, and it was super exciting. For the next 5 years, I was working just as hard as I had always worked, but it was feeling like, I guess I would say like, it started to feel like a grind. It started to feel like, obviously it wasn't a day job, but like the feeling that people get when you're just doing something for a paycheck, like it started to feel like that towards the end. And it really started to like grind me down, and I got pretty burnt out. And I took a sabbatical in 2022. And my big realization on the sabbatical was like, I thought I was an author. Like all of this shit, all the burnout and the stress and like long miserable hours. The problem was I thought I was an author. I'm an entrepreneur. This is like, I was creating a media and coaching business. I lost track of that because people showed up and started offering me like more money than I'd ever seen in my life to play as an author. And so I told myself, I'm an author. I do author things now. And I started living an author life. And it was like, I don't know, it was like walking around in clothes that are the wrong size. Like it's just very uncomfortable and eventually like starts to wear you down. And so on my sabbatical, I was like, I completely forgot. Like the way I got here is because I'm an entrepreneur. I should go back to being an entrepreneur and building online media and coaching businesses. And that's what I did. And I'm like happy as a pig in shit. So I haven't written a book in 5 years. So it's a simple shift in definition. And I guess my story, like the lesson from that is that it's very easy to unconsciously change how you see yourself based on the financial opportunities that show up. It's very tempting to do that. And I did that, and it like I ended up paying the consequences. So yeah, I'm back to being an entrepreneur, and I'm very happy.
Author.
Yes. Sometimes author.
Well, you are really good at, which is, I think, one of the reasons why so many people follow you online, but why I like talking to you. You're really self-reflective. Like almost every time we've talked, you've been like, I'm thinking about this. I tried this. I didn't like it. Like it didn't sit well with me. And so I thought about it and I changed it. And I think a lot of us in life, we just keep going. We're like, don't pay attention, keep going. And that's why burnout comes. There's no self-reflection. There's no review. But like, you're quite good, I think, at taking a step back and going, okay, let me think about this. Yeah. And even a reframe like I did there, you would have been very tempting for you to go like, oh, well, here's how you should label yourself.
Yes.
Like you accept somebody else's frame. It's really hard to not do, especially in an interview. To go instead, you said dumb question, this is what you should do instead, right? So for somebody listening, what is the way that you should self-reflect to even figure out, oh, I'm unhappy because I've labeled myself improperly?
Yeah. So a drum that I will bang on till my death. I keep pushing this message into kind of the productivity space, and I feel like nobody wants to hear it. But I think it's extremely important. So for people who care right now are in a phase of their life that they care very deeply about success, productivity, achievement, all those things, you have to view your emotions as another system to be managed. Most people just, like you said, push the emotions, they compartmentalize. They're like, we're not going to think about that now. I've got meetings to go to. And you can do that for a while. You can do that for a year, maybe a couple years, but like at some point it's going to come back and it's really going to bite you in the ass. And I think that the thing that doesn't get talked about enough is that your emotions are another system to be managed. And as soon as you feel yourself getting off track emotionally of like not enjoying what you're doing, not being excited about the people you're working with, not getting along with your team, like these are all signals of like something's off. And sure, maybe it's not showing up on the balance sheet and it's not showing up in the P&L, but like it matters, because if you're miserable, like that's fucking terrible ROI long term. like you don't want to be stuck in a business. You don't want to build your own prison, essentially. So the first thing I would say for people who like, you know, really care about that stuff is like to just acknowledge that this matters, that it does affect everything. And the second thing, I think once you realize that it is an important facet of everything that you're doing, it is another system to be managed, then you can start looking at it and thinking about it like you look at and think about other systems in your business or your career of like, okay, where's the bottleneck? You know, where's the poor ROI? Like where's the place or the person that I'm putting tons of energy into and I feel like I'm getting very little out? Like it's the exact same principles that you're applying in all these other areas of your life. You can look at your emotional life in the exact same way. In terms of tactically, I think journaling is like by far probably the easiest lift, like the highest leverage activity for people who haven't thought about this stuff a whole lot. Like just, you know, get yourself like a empty notebook and start asking yourself a lot of these questions and really starting with like the basics. Like, what do I feel about this? How am I feeling in this moment? How am I feeling today? How am I feeling about what I'm working on? How am I feeling about the people around me? And then once you've identified those feelings, like ask yourself why. Why do I feel this way? Why does it feel so draining when I'm working on this part of my business or on this part of my career? What is it about it? And then really like explore that, you know, give yourself the freedom to write pretty liberally until you find something.
That's really good. So no screaming manifestations in the mirror. And journal just kind of briefly about the things that we feel and ask why. That seems reasonable for like, you know, internet people.
It's funny too. Like it's such a basic thing. I used to call this the why game. And it's, you know, so you just take something you're struggling with and say like, how do you feel about that? Or like, why are you struggling with it? Take that reason. And then you take that reason and you say, okay, why is that reason a problem? And then you get another reason and you say, okay, why is that reason a problem? And it's just like layers of an onion, and you just keep going. And usually you'll get to a point where it gets circular. And like that circularity is usually like, okay, that's actually the real problem. That's the thing that you actually have to focus on, not this surface layer shit that, you know, you've been thinking about.
That's so good. What, you know, on the same vein, you were talking originally about, hey, like, I think people get this wrong and they're not listening to this, but I'll scream it from the rooftops. What else do you think that young people today just have so wrong? Yeah.
Well, we've definitely hit two of them. Like the failure piece that feels very particular to Gen Z, I think. It's just I'm alarmed by the amount of risk aversion. I think the other thing that people, you know, we talked about boundaries a little bit earlier. I do feel like there's maybe an overcorrection that's happening there. Again, it's great that people are becoming aware of boundaries and speaking up for themselves and being willing to say no. But I think, again, coming back, like there's so much shitty advice on social media that is just like, if they don't respect you, then they can get the fuck out of your life. And it's like, well, no, actually, some people you don't want to do that with, right? Like some people